Thank you. Do we know the meeting has been properly warned?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of May 5th. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of May 5th.
Thank you, Ian, who has moved to approve the minutes of May 5th. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
And that's unanimous, 5-0. Next up is chair's remarks. I don't have many. I just wanted to, let's see, sort of commemorate. We're kind of going into yet another phase of this new world we're in. We're having slowly a few stores open up in compliance with the governor's orders. And that's exciting and scary at the same time, I think, for everybody. I think it's more exciting for some people than scary, and more scary for some people than exciting for others. So I think it would be really good for all of us to remember that we all have different levels of anxiety about being close to people. I think we all crave being out there, so to speak, and going to stores and supporting our neighbors that way at their shops and hopefully soon restaurants. And that each of us have a different, what I would call risk tolerance for that kind of thing. So I think regardless of edicts coming from the governor or not coming from the governor, as the case may be, if you see somebody who has a mask, even if you're passing them, why not put yours on? Because you should have a mask downtown. When you go into a business, it's a pretty good bet that you're going to have to be within 6 feet of somebody. So there's really no reason why in a confined space you shouldn't put a mask on. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it's an easy thing to do. And it kind of supports everybody out there who's less comfortable. And in the odd place we find ourselves now, it actually supports people working there because they have been told by our governor that they must wear a mask while they're at your service. So for me, it feels like a sign of respect and personal safety, not for yourself so much, but for them, because they're showing you that respect. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say, because it does feel like kind of momentous, even though it's a small thing down the road. So I'm going to turn it over to our manager's comments right now.
Thank you, Tim. I just have one that's non-COVID related this evening. I wanted to call attention to the fact that yesterday we released the annual consumer confidence report in our public water system. And once again, thank goodness, but not a surprise, it's a very positive report. It confirms that all of the results of all of the testing are well within the allowable limits. There is no water system anywhere that doesn't have tiny amounts of contaminants. So it's just part of the fact that we draw our water from nature and then filter it and send it on through the system. So the systems are all designed to have very low tolerances of the various contaminants to make sure that there's never enough in the water supply to make it hazardous. And then the goal, of course, for any operator is to stay well below those low tolerances. And we are, in fact, well below the tolerances for all the different measures. So once again, the town's water supply has been given basically a grade of A. They don't grade it on an A, B, C, D, E, or A, B, C, D, F, but the numbers are really solid. And so we just wanted to call that out and reassure everyone in a time when, in fact, we have lots of other reasons to be anxious. Our public water supply is secure and is well operated and maintained. What we do also want to let folks know is if you want to see the results in greater detail, they're posted on the town's website. And you also can pick up a printed copy at several different locations around Brattleboro, in the municipal offices, at Brooks Memorial Library. Obviously, at those locations, you'd need to call and let us know you're coming, and we'd be happy to meet you at the door and give you a copy. But also at the Tri-Park Co-op office, where there's a convenient place for people to go in West Brattleboro to pick up the results. and at the Guilford Country Store, because we actually have water customers of Brattleboro water system down in Algiers on Route 5 in Guilford. So happy to share those results, and we hope folks will take a look at the report. It's very reassuring.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Next, we have select board comments and committee reports, and I think I'll tack my meeting notes about procedures on to the end, if you don't mind. Does anyone have any comments to make up front and or have committee reports? Daniel?
I'd like to report that the Traffic Safety Committee is actually going to meet this Thursday at 8 a.m. and that it will be available to watch just as this one is and participate in.
Except it's early in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, you got to wake up, but, you know, that's a prerequisite for being at any of these meetings.
Daniel, where would someone get the link?
Peter?
On the town's website, and I'll also put it in tomorrow's daily update. Just as we've been promoting this meeting for the last few days, we'll put in for the next couple of days that one. Actually,
Awesome.
just for tomorrow, because come Thursday we'll be in the meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And it just occurs to me that that's sort of an expansion of coverage of meetings, because we didn't record it for BCTV, I should say, did not record it before, and now we are. So that's kind of nice. Any other committee reports or select board comments before we launch into a couple of details here? No? I just wanted to remind people, next up is public participation. We've been asking people to make a little note in the chat box if you'd like to say something. It's sort of our way of having you raise your hand, just so I'm aware that you'd like to say something or ask a question. That's a great way to do it. And of any of you on the phone, I'm not really monitoring, but I think there is at least one caller. I will open up the phone lines, as they used to say in the radio days. Guess they still say that. At the end of, after we get done with the participants on GoToMeeting, I'll ask for phone callers, unless I don't see any at all, maybe I won't. So that's the way we'll do that. I did forget earlier to say something about BCTV, and I caught myself off guard. BCTV has, of course, been serving us all these years so wonderfully. And if you haven't heard yet, they are actually changing channels. They used to be reliably on 8 and 10, which is super easy to remember. And I don't actually have the numbers that they moved to in front of me. So if 4 is listening or watching, or if anybody wants to just shoot that to me, either or you can announce it in the chat and I'll repeat it. But it's in the thousands or something, hundreds.
Oh.
I apologize for that. It's a wonderful thing, though, even though it requires you, to go higher on the dial, so to speak. It's because it finally means that BCTV's programming is going to be listed in every kind of regular listing. And when I was on the BCTV board, that's something we fought for years, sort of like a parity treatment when it came to how people can find you on their cable system, for those of you watching us via cable. So I'll chime in.
So you mean parity as in equal time, as opposed to a parody meaning a mock, right?
Correctly. In fact, well, I meant parity in relation to, thank you for that clarification, PARITY, in relation to being listed, because the channel numbers used to be, you'd see the shows, House Hunters coming up, but BCTV's was like 6 hours of local programming instead of actually what the shows are called. So hopefully cable users will. Yeah. Peter has his hand up. I bet he's going to save me.
I was struggling to find how to get it into the camera, but I think I found it. 1075 and 1085 are the two numbers, and 1085 is where some people are watching us right now, and 1075 is the general programming.
Great. Right. And of course, these days you might just be able to say BCTV into your
Maybe.
remote. I have no idea. Thank you, Peter. I would have called that up on, I have another screen here, but there's no way I can talk and type at the same time. Just a male. Men can't multitask, I'm told. So we are going on now. Thank you. I'm here all night. Comedy all night.
What about parody?
Right. So we have public participation is next, and a gentleman named Doran Ham is wishing to speak. He was the first to raise his hand, so to speak, in our chat function. So if Doran can turn on his mic, or if Patrick can assist with that. And maybe even your camera, if it's okay with you, Doran, it'd be great for everyone.
Can you see me?
Not yet, but I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Sometimes it takes a moment to see
Sure.
you.
Share my webcam.
There you go.
Ah, there you are.
Do my hair to make sure it looks good. Hi guys, how you doing?
Hi.
So my name is Dory Ham. I'm actually here representing the Tenants Union of Brattleboro. I just wanted to introduce myself or introduce the organization to you all. We're still pretty brand spanking new. We're about a month old, but we are just a collection of tenants, and we want to be here to represent tenants' rights in Brattleboro. We have a website just called brattleborotenants.org. We're all starting to get very up on our tenant law in the state of Vermont. So we are just offering ourselves as a resource for tenants that are looking for to know what their rights are. We are not lawyers. We are just volunteers, but we are doing a lot of state seminars. We're learning a lot about Vermont state tenant law, and are here to support the tenants of the greater Brattleboro area. You can get in touch with us via our website and find out more about us there. But I just want to introduce myself to you all, because we'll definitely be trying to chat with you over the time as we learn the best way to voice questions and requests from the town council. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Nice to meet you, or at least see your face, Doran.
Yep.
And
They had requested that your URL is brattleborotenants.org, and I'll write that in the comments there.
okay, also known as Tub.
Tub, yes, we are the tub. We want everyone to get in the tub with us, so to speak. But obviously safely for social distance, you know.
Yeah. Great, and I actually had a chat request, and that's, you might see it. It's Doran, can you please repeat your, okay, you did that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And okay, so yes, it is once again brattleborotenants.org. Thanks, Doran. We look forward to hearing more from the group.
Great,
And,
thank you.
And also we had Millicent Cooley, who had an announcement to share with us. Millicent, would you like to join us? Hi. Great how everybody shuffles and then you have to find.
I know. Okay, so I'm making an announcement on the behalf of the Nourishing Artists campaign, because the Bama Tech and Marketing Group has been supporting that campaign. The campaign challenge was last Wednesday to generate gift card sales. It was very successful, and the sales unlocked matching donor funds that are going to pay for 300 dinners for local artists from local restaurants, but more artists are needed to sign up. And we want to give those meals away. And in order for the restaurants to be paid for providing them, this artists need to sign up. So we are spreading the word, we're putting it out in the media, etc. So any artist qualifies to get a restaurant dinner from one of our local restaurants if they've lived, worked, performed, displayed, taught, or practiced their art in Brattleboro. And the definition of artist is broad. It's not just for people who are painters or writers or trapeze artists, but for yoga teachers and people who work in museums and people who work in arts administration and hairstylists and tattoo artists and stagehands. You know, so it's broad, and please sign up. You can go to do that at brattleboro.com, and then you go down that homepage, and there's a block that says artist sign up, and you sign up, and you'll get a great meal.
Okay, great. Thank you, Millicent. Does anybody have any questions for Millicent?
I want to mention that what Stephanie just said here in the chat. There was a total of $19,270 total of gift card purchases. Total impact to downtown businesses is $25,270.
Great, thank you.
Wow.
Thanks so much for that and the update, Stephanie. And I'll just remind people too that the reason why we ask people not to share questions or the exact comments in the chat is that it doesn't get recorded, or at least it doesn't get recorded properly for open meeting law purposes. So that's why it's more of just a raise your hand type of thing. And we will be moving now into the COVID-19 update, which has a few letters surrounding it. So we'll be discussing quite a few things. And at the end, well, we'll see how it feels, but we'll definitely be asking for public comments on either individual or sort of the group COVID-19 agenda item, which is coming next. So we can move into that and start with an overall update from Peter Elwell, if you don't mind.
Thank you. The overall update this evening is brief, and then I know we will have a couple of other topics related to COVID-19 to discuss, but in terms of changes in town operations, it was 2 weeks ago right now that we were just opening the door just a crack back to town offices. By staffing them daily in the deepest part of the stay home, stay safe order, we were working almost exclusively from home and then having certain individuals come into the office just for certain tasks. 2 weeks ago yesterday, we made the commitment to have at least one person in each department in the offices each day, so that people who need to come to the office to do business have the opportunity to do that. We ask that people make appointments to do that whenever possible, and even more so that people continue to do work remotely. Get your services from the town remotely whenever you can. It's just safer for everyone that way. But we know that there are certain things that folks need to come to the municipal center or to another town office in order to do the piece of town business that needs to be done. And so we invite folks to call ahead so we know you're coming. We can meet you at the door. If you don't have a mask, we will hand you one as you come in. And then the business can be safely done using social distancing in the office. But that began 2 weeks ago. In the first couple of days, as you can imagine, there were certain questions that needed to be answered, some certain kinks that needed to be worked out just to make sure that our procedures were smooth and clear, both internally and to the community. We feel as though by the end of that first week, we were there. And the second week, last week, was very smooth. We're getting very little visitation, which is good. We're still having a lot of contact with the public, which is good. But we appreciate that folks are doing as much business as possible with us remotely. We'll be talking in the financial part of this about tax payments. The box in the parking lot of the municipal center was very well used. People got the hang of that very quickly. We appreciate that. It was safer for them and safer for the staff. That's how many people made their payments, and then others mailed them in. So the news of the transition into very limited office service is that that's gone very well, and we will continue in this phase for the foreseeable future. There will come a time when we staff up more fully in the offices, but it's not necessary at this time, and it's safer to not be having the offices more fully occupied. So we're staying in phase one of the reactivation at this point. And then the one other thing that has happened in this 2-week period is there's been some pretty significant increase in the amount of recreation activity, not formal programming, but the availability of town park facilities. I'm hearing a lot of
That's weird.
interference.
Yeah, somebody's microphone is open, I think. Stand by. I don't know, unless somebody just, one of the board members just cranked up the volume.
It's me somehow, but I haven't experienced this on GoToMeeting before.
I'd imagine somebody's
I'll
just
turn down my speaker and see if that helps. Hello? Try it. So in any event, the recreation, actually the parks facilities are being more actively used now. As part of the governor's reopening in phases of different activities in Vermont and society, one of those was to encourage the reopening of parks facilities in certain limited ways. So, you know, there's not leagues that are playing, and there's not other kinds of, you know, very organized activities happening yet at the parks, but they are available for folks to come out and use. We still do have the warning signs up, and we still do discourage the use of the benches and the playground equipment because we're not able to guarantee that it's been adequately cleaned in between users. But they are being cleaned daily, more than once a day, but it's just not enough to be able to assure the public that it would be clean at the time that somebody would come to use it. So we ask that people don't. But other than that, it's been pretty steady as we go these last couple of weeks. We do have continued planning for when town government, along with the rest of society, will continue to slowly become more active and interactive again. But that's the report for tonight from internal to town government. I have one other thing I'd like to announce on behalf of the state. It's required a lot of coordination locally. Primarily, our point person here has been, as he has been for much of our interaction with especially state government, but other entities that are providing services and coordinating services during the COVID-19 situation. Fire Chief Mike Bacassi, as our emergency management director within town government, has been coordinating with state officials
I'm on the telephone.
organizing food distribution sites. And Brattleboro will have a food distribution site next Wednesday, May 27th, from 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon in the student parking lot at BUHS. There'll be more details coming out. We want to push this out really heavily into the media so that everybody learns about it. If anybody needs food in your household, this is all free. You don't need to show any information about yourself or about your income or anything like that. We do expect that there will be a lot of demand for this. We expect the lines will be kind of long. So we ask you to be patient and come early. But there'll be a queuing system that has been designed specifically to account for the fact that where this has been done elsewhere in the state, there have been many cars that came and lined up to go through and receive the food. And so the reason BUHS was chosen is so that cars can queue over on Atwood Street and down Sunny Acres, where there's plenty of room. So people will be instructed to come up South Main Street and up Sunny Acres and then Atwood, and then be invited through that intersection to come into the parking lot and receive the food. We think that'll keep it really orderly, and everybody will be able to get what they need. So that's next Wednesday, the 27th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay, thank you. So we should probably remind people of that, certainly by early next week.
I'm sorry, Tim, I had you turned way down because I thought I was making the problem with the noise and I didn't hear you.
I was just going to say, well, as board members, we can kind of push that out and remind people early next week.
Thank you.
I have a question about the Parks and Rec programming.
Go ahead.
So the 2 tennis courts at Live Memorial Park are being used pretty heavily right now, as they're the only 2 tennis courts available in the town. And I wondered whether or not it was possible for us to have a conversation with the administration at the high school and see whether or not those 6 courts could be opened there in much the same way that our courts are open. It's a very low contact, low touch kind of situation. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yes.
And that would, I think, alleviate some of the, some of the pressure.
Absolutely. So I can't speak for the school. I can't be definitive about when that might happen. I can tell you that Carol Elliott has spoken with the officials at the schools, and that is in the works. I don't know the exact timing, but those courts will become available to the public, and we'll announce it as soon as we know.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. So that was your overall update, Peter.
Yes.
And if there's no further questions, well, let me just remind people that they can always ask a question or raise their hand, so to speak, in the chat function. I don't see anybody asking to do that, and I also don't believe I see anybody on the phones right now. So unless I hear from Patrick in the next few seconds, I think we should just move forward with the financial update. We can always circle back for general questions if we'd like.
Okay. So there's two pieces to the financial update. The first is the usual monthly report. That's a little unusual these days because of COVID, but I'll give that first, the broader perspective of the normal monthly. And then we'll focus back in on our revenue receipts and our estimates of where we think we're going to end the year, as we've been discussing these last couple of meetings. So the unsurprisingly, based on the fact that both revenues and expenditures have slowed as a result of the COVID-19 situation, the regular monthly report is pretty there's not a lot of news in that, not anything of much significance. We're 83% of the way through the fiscal year, and we're currently on a trend of 79% expenditures, and that's on its way down. You'll recall that just a couple of months ago, those two numbers were closer together, but because of the reduced level of expense over the last couple of months, the gap is widening there, and we'll have more to say about that in the projections for where we think we'll end the fiscal year. The utilities fund has spent a little bit more, but still under 80% expenditures through April 30th. And so, again, with 83% of the year gone and less than 80% of the expenditures, that situation is in good shape as well. The utilities fund revenues are steady, and as we'll talk about in a moment, we're feeling a bit more optimistic about the general fund revenues than we were a couple of weeks ago, but we still don't have really very definitive information yet about the general fund revenues. We'll have a much clearer picture on that and a much better, more detailed conversation about it 2 weeks from now on June 2nd. The solid waste fund is in the same condition as it usually is. It trails a month behind, so with both the revenues and the expenditures lagging there, I can say that it also looks like it's about on target. We're a little high on both revenues and expenditures for where where the March 31 numbers would have been expected to be. So being a month behind on those, it looks as though that budget is going to be solid as well. The loan report is interesting. So one of the first things that you as a select board did at the beginning of this COVID situation was allow those folks who are repaying small business assistance program loans to the town to defer those payments if they needed to, and there would be no penalty for that. And that is occurring on a number of the loans. The folks are deferring their repayment, and they'll pick that up again at the appropriate time when you determine those payments become due again. And the months that have been missed in between will be added to the end of the loan, and there'll be no penalty and no interest charged on the duration of the hiatus. What we have found, though, interestingly, is that there are several holders of those loans or people who receive those loans who are continuing to make the payments for whatever reason in their own circumstances. They're finding it advantageous to just stay on track with their repayment schedule. And so the loan report reflects that we have some deferrals and some who are current in their account because of their continuing to pay. I think those are the highlights. There's not a lot else to say about the overall report, but I'll pause to see if you have questions about the overall report before I provide the update about the projections.
Anyone have for overall? No, I think we're all on the edge of our seat for the projection of the quarter, to tell you the truth.
So the big news is in the receipts that we just received this morning from the state, the quarterly payments for the 2 local option taxes. We received this morning $70,000, $70,227 in rooms and meals tax remittances. That is low for a quarter, but not nearly as low as what we expected based on the fact that this is the first quarter of COVID impacts. I think there's probably a few different reasons for that. Part of it is that this was the quarter between, it was January, February, and March. So the first part of that period, first half of that period was sort of pre-COVID. And then there's also the fact that particularly in the lodging, there's kind of a mixed situation going on, but there is still a lot of lodging being provided because of how nimbly the state and the lodger and the local housing folks worked together to make good use of those facilities so that it is safer and better housing for people experiencing homelessness and others who have housing needs, so that those individuals and those households are safer and the community is safer by being providing that better lodging opportunity. We think that those things are contributing to this number, and also we've seen a tremendous effort by the restaurants themselves and sort of the community rallying around the restaurants for the creative ways in which they're still serving the community and staying in business, certainly with daunting challenges that vary from business to business. But the fact that there is a lot of at the curb activity going on too may be contributing to this. But whatever the detailed reasons for this, we did receive $70,000 as the town's share of the state's collections in Brattleboro for rooms and meals for the first quarter. And the figure for general sales tax was $181,927, a little over $180,000. That is below the figures for the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year, each of which exceeded $200,000, but it is above the expected quarterly, the amount when we first did our projections for the decision that first the select board and then town meeting made to add this to the town's mix of revenues. Our estimate was that we wouldn't receive this much money in a quarter. And so here, even in the first quarter of COVID impacts, those better than expected receipts are continuing within that source of funds. You'll recall that in our initial projection of year-end revenues, we took the very conservative approach to these 2 types of income and didn't expect to receive anything else on rooms and meals because we really didn't know what the impacts would be and how deferred payments from individual businesses to the state might delay the town's receipts. So we thought it would not be prudent to guess at a number. So we put 0 in for that and we received the $70,000. We did project that we would continue to receive sales tax revenue, but we didn't have a meaningful way to estimate that with confidence. And so what we did as a conservative factor there was just expect that we would meet our revenue projection, but not exceed it. And to do that, we would need to collect $191,000 in the 3rd and 4th quarters. And we've collected $181,000 in the 3rd quarter. So those 2 pieces of news are very significant for us and give us a greater confidence that we will not end the year in deficit. But the bigger factor, though, because of our reliance on property taxes, the unknown number, but becoming better known at this point, that will make the difference in the end between whether we have a small surplus or a small deficit, is the receipt of property taxes. And there the news is good as well. As of this afternoon, we have collected 97.4% of the money that is owed in property taxes to the town this year. You may recall from a conversation we had either at the last meeting or the one before that, that we projected in the analysis we did 98.75%. And the reason for that is because there's always in real time a little bit of under collection. In the long run, anything that isn't abated, the town does ultimately collect as delinquent taxes. But in real time, before the books close for this year, we would expect in a normal year to get to about 98.75%, and we're at 97.4 right now. That leaves us about $435,000 short of the mark. But in good solid shape. This is a normal place to be for the day after the deadline, a couple of days after the deadline. So it appears to us as though there has not been there certainly has not been widespread inability to pay, and it appears to us as though there's not even really a statistically notable incidence of folks finding themselves not able to pay their taxes in this quarter.
Great.
Yeah, that's fantastic news. I mean, I would love to think that everyone paying their taxes, almost everyone, on time, despite everything that many people are going through, not everybody, I suppose, is a testament to their confidence and support of, the importance of Brattleboro town taxes. But that's just what I would like to think of it as. I mean, I think it's wonderful news, and I thank everybody who has stepped up to the plate and probably put taxes in importance above some other things. Who knows? Like utilities or electric.
May I add one quick thing?
Sure.
To that, I just wanted to remind, I know that the board knows this because we've had interaction around this cycle, but so that the public is aware, I just want folks to know that because of this timing, how these bigger numbers are just coming in today, literally, we don't have an updated analysis. We're feeling really good about the news that we can share this evening, but we will have a detailed updated analysis, full look at all the expenditures and all the revenues with a projection for year end that we'll be putting out in writing prior to the June 2nd meeting, and then discussing with you on the evening of June 2nd.
Great. Does anybody have any comments? I mean, I have one more comment, but I feel like I'm hogging the comments here. Liz.
I just wanted to mention that the 1% includes internet sales, which I think is a very instrumental point of that tax.
Absolutely, that's an important piece of it. And doesn't the rooms and meals also includes alcohol, correct?
It does.
So, there's that consumption, for better or worse, still going on for that quarter reporting. I just wanted to say that, we've heard from a couple of citizens of, inquiring if we were going to make any blanket relief as far as the deadlines for paying taxes and as far as the waiving penalties and fees. And we kind of were like at a darned if we do and darned if we don't thing. I was of the opinion that if we did that too early, before we sort of had a handle on how people were able to pay and if the receipts were going to come up to fairly close to normal, that would send a signal that, maybe who people were on the line, they wouldn't pay taxes, or send a signal to people who could afford it that they wouldn't have to. So now, I don't know how the rest of the board is feeling, but I'm feeling like since we'll have a complete picture for our next board meeting, that we could still sort of acknowledge that next meeting and take that up if we feel it's necessary. That's just my current feeling about it. But I just wanted to throw out there that we have heard from a couple of citizens. Frankly, it's not been as much as I expected. So, and I did push out some info on abatement process. We have an excellent abatement process that's very fair. And I'm sure, I would imagine more people than normal will be taking advantage of that, and you're encouraged to do so. But I just want to throw it out there, you know, and not be silent on that issue anymore. Does any board members have a thought? Liz?
Maybe Peter, you could explain a little bit more about the abatement process, because I think a lot of people in town are not aware of it.
Sure. So the abatement process is where someone who, in their own particular circumstances, had a reason why they're not able to pay their taxes, would file an application for abatement. And the Board of Abatement includes select board members. It also includes justices of the peace, and I'm not sure exactly who else. It's a large group of people from whom a smaller subset sits in for any given hearing. That process is organized down in the town clerk's office, so folks who want to find out more about it and get an application can look online under the clerk's office, and can also call the clerk's office, and they'll be happy to help you. The way that it works is individuals provide information about their circumstances and about their finances, and the Board of Abatement looks at that and makes a judgment as to whether to relieve some portion or all of the tax obligation for a particular cycle. The particulars can vary from, you know, a quarterly situation to an annual situation, and they can vary from a partial relief to a full relief. The most common example of tax abatement, although it's fortunately not that often, but it's sort of the most obvious way to help people understand how this works, is if there's been a fire or some other significant damage to a building where the folks are not getting the use out of their home, or their, you know, building of whatever type, whether it's residential or commercial, and they're going to incur a cost to restore it and get it back functional again. That oftentimes when that sort of an incident happens, folks will come in and seek abatement because of the financial circumstances. The value of the property is diminished for that period of time, and they're incurring extra costs. So the Board of Abatement tends to look very flexibly at those kinds of situations, and looks, you know, carefully and attempts to be as fair as possible to all taxpayers with other situations that are more personal to a particular taxpayer. I would say that part is particularly challenging for the Board of Abatement because there's a, you know, an obvious important consideration to the particular circumstances that are being presented to them in the appeal. And there's a balancing act between that and the fact that taxes that are abated then are an obligation that is shared by every other taxpayer in town. And so those situations each are dealt with on a case-by-case basis by the Board of Abatement, being just as fair and even-handed as they can be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody want to add anything to that subject? No? Okay.
I'll bite.
Go ahead, Danny.
I'm glad that the revenue is coming in, because the revenue is how we pay for services. And, you know, and I don't want to be kind of singing and dancing about it either, because I know that everybody is struggling right now, some more so than others. And I just kind of wanted to mention that the state has a disconnection moratorium on utilities, and that is currently in effect, I think, until like June 15th or July 15th. But there are still funds available. I work at SEVCA, and like there are still funds available through SEVCA to help with paying overdue balances on electric bills. And I would encourage folks out there who are, you know, who are choosing to pay for this thing and not this thing, to reach out for support with, you know, with those bills.
Absolutely, good point. And also the, you know, very real things like the governor has just signed, I believe, the no evictions order. Mm-hmm. Correct. Yes. Doesn't really help you with payments, but it certainly gives a little peace of mind temporarily, at least. And I know it's an issue that the tenants union of Brattleboro is working on. Oh, Liz.
Just a word about evictions. You know, SEVCA also provides assistance to people, or at least discussion of where they can find resources, so that if someone may be unable to pay their rent and may at some point be subject of eviction, they should start now to plan to alleviate that, so that when the time frame is up, they're not immediately adjudicated against. So they should call SEVCA, see what help that they can provide, so that they can plan now to have like a payment plan or whatever, so that when the eviction moratorium is lifted, they're not subject to it.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I was going to add that as well.
Sorry.
Absolutely. Ian?
Yeah, and just to give some dates for the courts, the order came in yesterday from the Windham County Civil Division that for evictions and foreclosures that haven't been commenced yet, they are stayed, can't happen until after July 15th, unless the governor's order emergency is continued to a later date. But at the moment, it's July 15th. That's if it hasn't been commenced. But if an eviction or foreclosure was basically frozen due to COVID-19, it's after June 15th that it could move forward. So those are just a couple dates for people to think about. And that information is available on the judiciary website and also at Vermont Legal Aid.
Fantastic. I love it when there's knowledge coming from all corners of the board. Wonderful. Not from me in this case. Great. Well, I just wanted to remind everybody who might have tuned in recently, I haven't been watching everybody who's here, but welcome again to everybody, that we're moving through some COVID-19 updates. At the end, we're going to actually sort of call if there's any other further things, because there's just so much that comes up with COVID-19 that I think it's appropriate to kind of have a silent letter D on there, but we don't know what to call it. The next item, I don't think the financial update is going to have, whoops, wow, user error on my computer. Sorry about that. I don't see any phone callers, and I haven't heard from a chat from the public for those two parts of our COVID-19 update. So I'd love to move into a discussion for possible temporary expansion of outdoor business activity during COVID-19. There's been some individual chats going around, and I invited Stephanie Bonin to come in to chat with us about what the DBA might be talking about. And I just got a message that there is a caller. But before we invite Stephanie, let me see if a caller is available that would like to say something. We know you're there, caller, but you don't have to say anything. We just want to give you that opportunity. So awkward silence ensues. So I will now say, if Stephanie's ready to chat, she's welcome to turn on her camera. I'm assuming you're wanting to do this. Oh, there you are. And I'll remind everyone, it's of course an idea that we don't know what's needed in the community yet. This is kind of an opening discussion, and that's why I invited Stephanie to give us a little feedback, especially for the tightly confined downtown area.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think a little there's speed. Are you all hearing the
Yeah. Do you have headphones?
A lot of feedback.
I'm actually not hearing the feedback, but it's hard to hear you, Stephanie.
Well, it might be because I'm distracted by the feedback.
Yeah, just my camera. Yep.
Okay, let's try that. Yeah. Still.
Maybe the phone.
Oh,
Often, if you can turn down your speaker to as low as possible, Stephanie, or use headphones if you have them that
Oh,
aren't too
okay.
good.
I turn it down. Is that any better?
Let's see, just chat a little bit.
Okay. Am I still hearing feedback? Or are you still hearing feedback? Yes, you are. Okay. Let me pull up the phone number to dial in. Yeah. I'm about to speak.
It's interesting that I don't get the feedback. I just get the silence.
It's weird.
That's because your chair.
And I've lost your camera. Is that true for everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just dialing in. Sorry.
To be a phone caller, Stephanie?
Yeah, I am.
I could always play my elevator music again. Oh, she's
No.
doing
Nope.
vetoed.
We can be patient.
Certainly.
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, man.
It's really bad, huh?
Still there.
Do you have a proxy?
There goes that plan. Well, we now know it's not the Wi-Fi. Is that any better?
Yes. Although
That is
there's
terrible.
feedback, but we can hear you.
It's good. You know why I thought it was better? I had my volume all the way down. Darn it. Does anyone have any ideas?
I can
We
hear
can
you.
Just
though.
suck it up.
Oh,
Yeah.
we can hear you. There's some feedback, but you should go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm gonna put myself on mute so I don't get distracted by myself. Okay, I had a little bit of perspective would be helpful for those that are not following as closely to what's going on with the opening up. So the opening up is happening. It's happening at different levels. What that means is that the governor is saying, yes, this business can open, but it'll be with this amount of capacity. And this sector can open, but it can be only this many employees, and so there's all these reasons. So what we saw on Monday was merchants opening up, but with 25% capacity being allowed. We don't know when restaurants are going to open up, but certainly if we're following suit with other states, they are going to open up in phases, and those phases might look like I'm giving examples from other states, might be you can have curbside and outdoor seating, but no seating inside. Then another phase might be you can open up with 25% capacity inside. So however way we slice it, we can be very confident that we're not just going to open up 100% and be business as normal. And so this conversation can be looked at as a way which people are talking a lot about these times right now, and that is that our world is going to look different than it used to look. And also, it can also be framed in the conversation of a temporary thing. So I think those two things are important to keep in mind. And so the conversation being, how can we lift up our businesses in any way possible by repurposing public spaces, and specifically repurposing public spaces for places for people to sit at in the case of restaurants, or even places for people to shop in the case of businesses. mainly this discussion, I think, has been more focused or will be more focused on restaurants. And so the idea is, can we close the roads? Can we reclaim parking lots? Can we put restaurants outside, basically, with the idea of lifting them up in any small way that we can? With whether the reopening phase is just simply a decreased capacity because of the self-isolating rules, or whether it is a percentage. I just want to say again that whatever decreased amount, it's not a sustainable business model. And so that's the problem that I feel we're looking at right now, is how can we give any assistance possible to make it more, one step closer to a sustainable business model. The ideas that I thought that we could start with was the idea of blocking off Elliott Street every Friday through Sunday. And that space could be used for either businesses to bring their shops outside, or for people to sit off of the restaurants. The second idea is sidewalk activation. And so how can sidewalks be used, still complying with ADA, still complying with other things we need sidewalks to be, which is to walk from place to place. And then the third is creating dining parklets out of, I would suggest 2 parking spaces for a restaurant. And I don't know the exact dimensions of parking spaces, but my best guess is that it could seat 3 tables. And then those dining parklets would have to come with some money support in terms of building out those parklets. Otherwise, I would suggest the concrete curb barriers that the town uses to create a dining room in those parking spaces, but not have any cost to the businesses, because that's the big trouble here. My fourth suggestion would be to close off, within the dining parklets, to not forget harmony spaces. So harmony spaces can be accessed for the Works, Arkham, Turquoise, Tulip, Duo, whereas the parking spaces have some of those same restaurants and others like Dosa, Peter Haven's, Elliott Street Fish and Chips. And then my last one is expanding public places like Pliny Park for applications for businesses to do things in them, and potentially an application process. So that's what I throw out as ideas.
Okay, I went on mute as an experiment. I'm not sure it helped. Liz?
I just had a thought about, like, the Strolling of the Heifers has floats. Can those floats be used to be stationary parklets? Like, they're already built. And could they be borrowed for this purpose?
Yes. I say it like that because anything can be turned into a public space. So yeah.
Yeah, I've just thought that these things exist somewhere. I don't know, you can talk to Strolling of the Heifers, but see if they could be used for this purpose. That might be helpful.
Ian had his hand up first.
Who did I beat? I didn't mean to beat. You sure? Okay. 70. For the idea of closing Elliott Street, have you spoken to many of the businesses on Elliott who would utilize it? Like, what's the numbers? What are we looking at?
I talked with Bee's Nest, Blueberry House, Peter Haven's, Dosa.
Okay.
Those are I think Hand Knits might have weighed in as well with that. And
they were, was there a consensus there on support, or?
Yeah, all of the restaurants that I spoke with all were very supportive of continuing the conversation. The hesitation that came out was I can't afford to build anything and I can't afford to furnish anything. So that was where that hesitation was. The other hesitation was how my sidewalk is so narrow. How would that work? So any of the hesitation that I've heard coming from people isn't the concept, it's the question mark of how exactly.
Yeah, how to implement it actually. Yeah. Thank you.
And does it, oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Somebody else, go ahead. Daniel.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I guess Daniel was going to go, but if Daniel's...
I was, but Liz is going to add on. So go ahead, Liz.
Oh, I just wondered whether it had to be for the whole weekend or just like Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night.
I like the, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I really, I like the idea of utilizing our public spaces in creative ways, and I want to be able to make our downtown as vibrant as possible. I was wondering about the Elliott Street closure and the impact that would have on Central Fire Station.
Yeah.
We don't want to have a fire engine having to tear through all these diners, and we don't want to have a fire engine having an unnecessarily longer route to fire. But I mean, I'm excited to work together on it and do what we can. So I don't just yay. In the downtown planning process, we talked a little bit about like restaurant parklets in the pre-COVID time as well. So this moment is also an opportunity to do things that are on the back burner for a little while.
I have a couple comments. Brandy, did you want to chime in?
I just wanted to say that I agree with Daniel. I want to support any endeavor that the downtown businesses, and I should say all of Brattleboro businesses. There's other businesses that also are lucky enough to maybe have their own parking lots and whatever they want to do, but I think downtown businesses face a unique spatial challenge with moving outside. They don't have a nice parking lot like a Ramonto's or 99 and I'm very open to hearing anything. I'm also a little bit nervous about Central Fire, but that doesn't mean I'm closed off to the idea. I want to hear whatever ideas. I love the idea of outside stuff and vibrancy, and I'm not just open to hearing about it. I'm eager to support it.
Oh, Liz.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the Harmony lot, and I'm all supporting the businesses and moving outside. I think that's a great idea. I'm less disposed to use of Plenty Park.
Stephanie, do you want my comments first, or would you like to jump in on those?
Go ahead. Thank you.
I would be uncomfortable with Plenty Park. I don't see the utility too much for businesses because it's isolated and across a very busy road, and added safety questions about that, and just sort of use of everyone's use versus just a few businesses' use. So that feels problematic to me. The most positive ideas I hear are the parklets and Harmony Lot. So there's issues with both, I'm sure. Ones I'm not even thinking of, and ones that are easy to think of. But still, they seem to be the most promising ideas to explore. I think the street closures, every time I think about what street and when, I come up with all kinds of problems. Not only the safety aspect from police fire, but like even closing off from Harmony Lot entrance to Main Street, which we've done before for short periods of time for great activities that DBA has helped with. That closes off drive-ups to hotel pharmacy prescriptions. So that's kind of problematic in that sense. Main Street is, and people don't know this, Main Street is pretty much jurisdiction by the state. So we don't have a lot of options without going through pretty big hoops with the state. They've done it obviously for parades and such, but that's a very short closure. Peter, just nod if I'm right, and if I'm not right, just raise your hand for me. And the last sticking point that we'd really have to talk about for me is the money thing. I mean, the town has resources that are sometimes easy to be deployed without too much money coming from the town, but to actually construct something like a fully constructed parklet that looks nice for a business might be something that's beyond what I'd be willing to entertain myself from a taxpayer perspective. So, Daniel?
Yeah, I just want to jump on that. Like, so the library, you know, had the outdoor seating that they were starting to make available to folks. You know, so maybe it doesn't need to be such an elaborate parklet. It needs to be safe. You know, it needs to be cordoned off from traffic, and it needs to be functional and versatile. But maybe it doesn't need to be the world's most expensive thing. And maybe it can't be the world's most expensive thing.
Sure. Ian?
Yeah, and I think thinking as I'm considering this more, I like the idea of something that can be more consistent. You know, this time there's just so much change happening all the time, and the idea that like, okay, when is Elliott Street going to be closed? Like, is it Friday night and Saturday night? Is it all day Saturday? Is it the idea of maybe picking, if we were to do something like this, pick a place where it could be more consistently being used in that way would be, as a consumer myself, more desirable, definitely.
Tim, may I have a couple of comments from staff?
Oh, please.
Thank you. In order of sort of the lightest lift to the heaviest lift, and that's not to say that we can't do the heaviest lift, and it's not to say that the lightest lift is easy, but easiest to hardest, we view the Harmony lot, Elliott Street, and the parklets from the ideas that have been considered. And clearly, as you get out of downtown, there's a lot of opportunity to work with individual property owners and individual proprietors because of parking facility. You know, they have their own parking lots and other kinds of sort of more room to do this sort of thing. And so, overarching all of this, I want to say there's already been some communication between businesses and town staff, and we're eager to work together with the DBA, with the chamber, with individual businesses. You know, broadly, we want to be flexible. We agree with the philosophy that's been described about how this is a moment when we need to rally around doing some things we might not otherwise have allowed because of the particular circumstances, but it's also a time when we're going to learn from that creativity in things that might have a longer term benefit for the town, so for the community. And so we agree with all of that, and we look forward to working on these things. Just to sort of put a very tentative description on why I listed those three in the order I did, just so that the community can have that awareness and the board can have that awareness as we dive into working on details together with the business community. The Harmony lot, particularly as the reopening begins, you know, once things get going and there's a lot of activity going on again downtown, we'll all look forward to the time when we need all those spaces in the Harmony lot. But we actually think that it's reasonable to expect that, you know, in the early weeks of recovery, that we won't have full demand for the parking resources downtown. And if people are willing to just park a little further out over at the transportation center, we can make space available in the Harmony lot, both town controlled space and even in the privately owned part of the lot. There's the likelihood could be some accommodation to some of these business activities and a place for the community to safely come together with more space there without it sort of bumping up against the movement of vehicles and other kinds of hazards. So we think the Harmony lot has a lot of promise to it, and we look forward to working on that together. Elliott Street is a slam dunk for sometimes being open and sometimes not. And, we totally get the downside to that, as Ian expressed, that, then people are kind of wondering, when is it working and when isn't it? If we can create a rhythm out of that so that people will know when things are happening in a sort of block party format and when they're not, then we definitely, that's a space we can work with. That's a space town staff has actually suggested to people from the community and prior select boards as being ideal for this kind of activity, because of the fact that when it's a relatively short-term shutdown, like typically for the activities that have gone on there so far, it'd be, you close it at around 4 in the afternoon and you open it back up at around 9 at night. And in that kind of a window where it's just an evening, it has very little impact on the, negative impact on the businesses that are affected, and almost no impact at all on traffic. It does have a rerouting impact for the fire trucks, but we've worked through that in terms of the occasions, and on a fairly often basis. I'd say 4 or 5 times a year we've been using that space now the last couple of years, and successfully so. So the fire department knows how to adapt for that, but does have a concern that if we were to just give that space over to this kind of activity, not only would it have negative impacts of a more enduring nature on the businesses that are in the blocked off area, but it also would have a more enduring and a much greater concern for us in terms of that enduring impact on the fire response time. So there's a balancing act there, but we think that there's an opportunity to work together and find a way that can be part of this solution. And then the parklets are just really challenging. We love the idea, but there is the cost of acquiring the parklets, and there's the practicality of them being small spaces, right? One of the things that's really fabulous about our downtown, makes it different from a lot of other downtowns, is it's got that traditional closeness. It's a walk, it's a human scale. It's not a vehicular scale. But this is a moment when that's not convenient for us, because there's just not that much room in that parking corridor. And so, what you were saying, Stephanie, about, you probably have to take a couple of spaces even to get 3 tables there. I think that's true. And, we'd have to work with each other to even be sure that that's enough spacing. And so we want to work together on that one too, but we think that's a much more challenging prospect to create something, particularly in COVID. So in non-COVID times, if that was something we wanted as a community amenity and we were willing to have people sort of be in tight tables near each other, that's a different question. But as part of the COVID recovery, we think the parklets are pretty challenging.
Okay.
Great. I have both sort of a board member question for Peter, actually. Actually, first I want to give the opportunity to Stephanie. Do you want to reply to any of that stuff?
Sure. So one thing is the difference between keeps on coming up for me is the difference between the parklet idea. It feels like it's really assigned to a specific business, whereas Harmony, to a certain degree, Elliott Street, definitely, Pliny, definitely, it feels more like this sort of concept of Brattleboro's dining room, and that you could go to any restaurant that you want, and then you could go somewhere and be distant. So it's sort of like 2 different business models a little bit. Whereas a dining parklet, let's say there's one in front of Elliott Street Fish and Chips, they would be bringing the food out to the person like they do normally at an inside table. So I do think that each of the different ideas, kind of like Ian's question was, are people interested in these ideas? I think that I think most people would adapt to anything, but it does sort of interact with the business in a very different way. The reason why I brought up Pliny is me personally, I like oddball spaces. Hermit Thrush is right there where you don't have to cross the street if they chose to do anything. But I also think that it could, with some creative person, it could actually be a really beautiful space to sit and use. And I think it's really underutilized in our community. Then I think the other, yellow chair furniture that was purchased by the AARP grant that was myself and several others in the community with the Alley Lane project is definitely able to be, used, and Star already had wanted to check it out to people. So I do think that furniture, I also don't think furniture is if there's decreased capacity inside, there's lots of furniture inside that's not being used. So furniture can be easily, it's not a hurdle, but yeah. And then lastly, the parklets in the construction, the thing that's great about the parklets versus the concrete boundaries is that it goes flush with the sidewalk, which not only with ADA, but also a good point is that then, because Peter's point was great, that that's a snug space, but if you're flush with the sidewalk, you're actually able to kind of branch out in different ways because you can straddle both the sidewalk and the parklet and still have the sidewalk be used as a sidewalk. So there's major benefits to investing. We have, different people have looked into grants on building these. The problem is how many times do I say this about everything? Nothing is urgent enough. So these grants are getting approved and you might see the money in July. Well, that's not fast enough. So I think I hit everything.
Great. I just wanted to say, Millicent, I'll remind you that I'm going to just read your question because it's just a lot faster. And people participating in this meeting can see it, but again, I ask people to jump on to ask questions because that's how it becomes part of open meeting and part of the record. But Millicent's asking, can someone give more detail about why Pliny Park is less desirable for use in this way? It comes with charm. And I just wanted to say that I was the one who said that I was opposed to the use of Pliny Park. From my perspective, it crosses a line between a park that should be available at all times for everyone, and giving that over to a business will make that impossible or at least change it. So I just don't like the feeling of using Pliny Park at all for businesses, but that's just me. I'll address that at a later meeting. Liz?
It's not just you. I feel the same way about Pliny Park, that it's a public park and it shouldn't be used for commercial purposes, even though it's an emergency, and because I think that Harmony Lot is so useful for that purpose.
Yeah. And Daniel?
I mean, just kind of adding on to that, I think, in normal times, you might use Pliny Park to go and eat your lunch. You might get takeout and, as much the same way that you'd use any of the other public spaces. And, as somebody that's sat and had lunch downtown a lot in the last couple of years, it's often hard to find a space that isn't, that isn't actually like in the business that you're buying the lunch from. Yeah. So I just think, trying to keep as much space available downtown for people to be able to sit and enjoy the weather. We don't have the world's longest summer. Let's try and get as much of it as we can. And also to provide opportunities for people to take their lunches out, and make those spaces as pleasant as they can be.
Agreed. Brandy?
I agree about Pliny Park, and not because I don't think in concept that it's a great idea to use it for restaurants, but I think a lot of our community members that maybe aren't going to be able to afford it shop at restaurants are using the park now and then. But I also want to really say that I'm going to be pushing over the next few meetings for us, and I know I'm not alone, to really, I'm going to say that I'm not in favor of that because I like to keep that the norm, but I don't think it would be appropriate for any of us on this board to be saying no to everything because it's not the norm, because that's not how we're going to support our local businesses. So while I do like the idea of keeping Pliny Park the norm for those who might not be buying lunches, et cetera, downtown, I'm going to really encourage us all to step outside of our norm for at least this summer and possibly the foreseeable future to try to keep our downtown vibrant.
Great. Well said, everyone. Oh, wait. Liz, did you raise your hand again?
I just gave a thumbs up to what Brandy said.
I keep, I keep wanting to do this thing that I used to see in elementary schools all the time. It's like when you
Doesn't that
agree.
mean milk?
No, it's not that. It's not that.
Oh.
It's this. Like I feel the same way. At least-
Oh,
Hmm.
perfect. I thought that meant milk. I know.
Oh, well, Elizabeth
We
could
should
tell us.
ask Elizabeth, yeah.
Anyway, Stephanie had raised her hand, and I just had that quick last question for
I
Peter.
don't want to get caught in the Pliny Park weeds, but I do feel it's important to say that any space that we use for however we reassign spaces is multi-use public spaces. And so if you have a Brattleboro dining room in Harmony, if you have a Brattleboro dining room in Pliny, those spaces are going to be used in many different ways. So cars are still going to park in part of Harmony. People are going to still hang out and sit in part of Harmony. And the same, I think, is holding true to Pliny. It doesn't all of a sudden become a person, a singular commerce type space. If we put in 3 tables and chairs that a business can use or that people could use to take takeout to, but have it be a more purposeful dining room space. So multi-use is my point.
Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to ask Peter, because I'm dying to know, and tell me if we should call in Hillary to answer this question, but how does the Department of Liquor Control permitting process, has there been any kind of signals from them that they're considering loosening their pretty restrictive rules for this kind of thing?
No, we actually have had some communication with them, and the indication is that an outdoor consumption permit, a normal outdoor consumption permit, will be required for alcohol to be served outdoors.
Okay.
So that'd be true even
Mhm.
in a situation where a restaurant that has a parking lot would be putting some tables out into the parking lot in order to do the outdoor safer approach. They would have to get an outdoor consumption permit to sell their alcohol in the parking lot. And I'm not sure, frankly, exactly how that would work for the things that we're talking about where there'd be some shared spaces. What I can say is town staff certainly would go to bat. Once we have a set of ideas that the business community is rallying around and the select board is rallying around, and we know what we want to try to achieve as a community, we'd certainly push hard for some flexibility from the state in the spirit of what we're saying and they're saying about needing to support businesses. We haven't yet seen that in the response from the Department of Liquor Control, but I think there's room there for us to push back. We would only, as a community, want to set it up in responsible ways, right? So if there was to be something going on in the Harmony lot and it was to include serving alcohol for those establishments that include that as part of their meal, we'd want that to occur in a safe manner, and we could go to bat with the business, in communicating to the state as needed.
Okay, thank you. And Ian, you had your hand up for a moment.
No, never mind.
Okay, Liz?
I have a question for Stephanie, because I seem to understand that what Stephanie was trying to create is a Brattleboro dining room that has tables and chairs for multi-use of the restaurants. And it would seem to me that if a restaurant was going to serve drinks, that it would need to be kind of overseen by the particular restaurant that was selling the drinks. And that would wreck your model of this overall Brattleboro dining room. So do you have thoughts about that?
Yes, thank you for letting me clarify. So 2 different concepts. The parklet concept speaks more to expanding capacity, whereas the Elliott Street closure, each situation speaks differently. So Pliny Park speaks differently more speaks to the Brattleboro dining. The Elliott Street closure, you can imagine that the stores in front could have table service right in front of them, but any shared table space in the middle of the street could be someone taking something from Amy's and bringing it over, or Yala from bringing it over. So I think that we're grasping at whatever we can get in terms of expanded capacity, but unfortunately, the parklet idea is the most cut and dry in terms of expanding occupancy, so that you're right. The scenario is you wait on your tables out in front of your business. So two
Right.
different.
Thank you.
Mhm.
But that could be, both of those things could be achieved in harmony because
Yeah,
there's that
and-
much room.
Right, and Elliott, yes, harmony and be simultaneous. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what's next?
We lost
I
Tim
had a
Guglio.
bit of
I
a
think,
hiccup there with.
I don't think it's right still,
You have
Tim.
me
Your mouth
back?
looks weird. Not really.
There's a
I'm
delay.
going to try turning off.
Yeah.
Hello.
My camera. Can you folks hear me now?
Yes.
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 Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
You can. You don't see me though, do you?
No.
No.
We know what you look like.
You see me too. Okay. Good. Well, I'm experiencing a hiccup here. I don't know. I didn't change anything, but I guess my Comcast connection is failing. You still hearing me?
We can
Yes.
hear you really
We
well.
are.
Yeah.
Are you still hearing me?
We are.
Okay, great.
Are you hearing us?
Well, yeah. I'm going to try sharing my webcam again
go.
because it's just.
Oh, there you
too weird
are.
not to be able to see anybody. Better? Okay.
Yep.
Let's hope that doesn't happen again. So I know that there's at least, actually, there's a couple callers on the line. So I just wanted to see if any of the callers wanted to chime in with a comment or question. Let's give that a second.
Hello.
Hello.
No.
Tim, Dick DeGray.
Hi, Dick DeGray.
How are
You've
you?
already identified yourself. How are you?
All right, great conversation. And one of the things that when you're talking about logistics in Elliott Street, it is a critical street in terms of logistics for the community, not only for police and fire, but for a very congested downtown and, for lack of a better term, malfunction junction. Elliott Street is a great relief for traffic going through town. And I'm extremely concerned about closing off the street from Friday afternoon until Sunday afternoon and what impact that would have on the local vehicular traffic. I think something that needs to be considered. I think the parklet idea in front of the restaurants is a great idea. One of the things that we have to be concerned about is we do want to have places for people to park when they come downtown. And from all the conversations we've had about parking through the years, the further people we force them out, the less they come downtown. They want to get a parking place right in front of where they're going shopping. So even though I agree with that, I think you have to consider how many you would have, or do you close off one side of Main Street and leave the other side for parking? Plenty Park is, I would agree with all the board members, Plenty Park is a community park, and I certainly wouldn't advocate anybody going in there unless they were, you have people that rent the space or for an evening at numerous times through the year. But that's just a great spot. And I would agree with Daniel. You go down there and you sit and you have lunch and all the flowers around. It's just a great spot. The Harmony lot, one of the questions I have for Stephanie is talking to Richard French, who owns the works, who has been talking to me about getting space in the Harmony lot. but also having a tent, because having a place to go where there might be inclement weather once or twice through the summer, and putting up a tent, but that is a tremendous expense. And, you know, when you talk about having it a community seating area, is that something that people were talking about? I know Stephanie said people don't have extra dollars to spend, but maybe on if everybody made a contribution, they're quite expensive if you were going to put up a considerable tent. And the question also about alcohol, taking it to like a community area, again, logistically, if you're eating over at Amy's and you want to go over to the space, by the time you get there, your food's going to be closed. So logistics has got a lot to do with where we do this and how much we do. And that's why I think the parklet idea really sounded the best of all three. But I really wanted to chime in about the Elliott Street. Not that I'm opposed to it, but I really think you have to have it on your radar in terms of what that street has for the community as a whole, and the traffic that it has on it. It's an extremely busy street for our downtown. It's one of those great pass-through streets that we have. So I'm going to drop off and listen to your responses to the few questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Dick. Well, my only response would be, I share some similar concerns about Elliott Street. I'm not sure we were talking about an all weekend type thing. That seems tough, but I think people were talking more about an evening here and there. But what you bring up is certainly correct. Liz, you were making a noise.
No.
Oh, I did that.
Oh, Brandy, sorry. It came from the thing. Okay, so we were talking about it, but I do share some of that concern. Anyone else? Stephanie?
I can respond to the Richard French. So that's that balance between using things in dual ways. So Richard French would absolutely like to have an extension of his dining room so that he can take his lost capacity and put it in an outdoor space. So putting up a tent and having that be the workspace. So that would be excellent and great. And Arkham could potentially expand their space to do the same thing. Turquoise. So that is that idea of having it be associated with a specific business.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a daunting task. I'm going to say that I keep thinking of new things, and I keep thinking of the businesses that want their parking spaces to be available for pickup now that we have a to-go situation for a lot of businesses, and then another business that wants to use that same spot perhaps for dining. So I don't envy your challenge a little bit, Stephanie, because I'm sure you have competing interests within even the downtown DBA folks. But it's a good start to a conversation. Brandy?
Yeah, I want to just say that while we are doing really well downtown with curbside and pickup, and I love the service, and I'm glad it's not probably going to go anywhere for most businesses, it's just super unsustainable as a profit model. And so we are going to have to ask businesses to give up a little bit of parking so that it can be both curbside and also help fulfill the 25% capacity or the outdoor capacity, because businesses can't succeed on just curbside alone. They're going to have to start, restaurants are going to have to start adding outdoors, and we're going to have to be brave enough to make space for that. And that's just that.
Reasonable. So I think what we should do from this point is sort of turn the conversations over between town staff and the DBA and certainly the chamber too. Unless I should, well, let me just, Oh, go ahead, Ian. I also want to just invite, if there's another caller, to just, as Ian's talking, just get ready to unmute so that I don't leave anybody out there. Go ahead, Ian.
Just newbie question. Where does this go from here? So we have this nice conversation, and then Stephanie talks to the town staff, and then what's the next step?
We'll
Good
come
question.
back to you
We'll come back.
as jointly as possible, depending on where we land in those communications. The goal certainly is to arrive at a plan that the businesses think is viable and exciting, and the town thinks is permittable. And we come to you and we say, here's what we think we can all accomplish together. Is that okay with you, Select Board? And it's going to require a lot of flexibility. It'll be either, like some emergency ordinances that'll be adopted in order to allow this stuff, or just acknowledgement that there would be activities going on that don't comply with our ongoing overarching regulations, but for this moment in time are going to be okay. And we would enumerate those for you so that it's really transparent to the community of what rules would either be being bent or temporarily changed. So I see that kind of a discussion 2 weeks from tonight. And, worst case scenario, which we're going to work together to avoid, is that we come back and the businesses want some things that we as staff have concerns about, and we'll just explain what those concerns are and offer what we think can be accomplished that approaches what's being requested, even if it's not everything that's being requested. And, we'll have that conversation. But to the maximum degree that we can, we're going to come back to you with one plan that we're all rallying around. We think that's best for everyone involved.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Liz?
I just want the record to show that there was a lot of positive head nodding.
Agreed.
We recorded in the video, but not in the minutes, so that's nice.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so that was this. This is this last moment with any callers that wanted to jump in. Right now is the time. And I then want to just move on to any last COVID-19 related items that the board wanted to bring to us. Daniel.
Yeah, so on Friday, the governor issued his most recent addendum to the executive order. And one thing in it about mask use jumped out at me. So I'm just going to read it. So it says, general public mask use. All Vermonters are encouraged to wear face coverings over their nose and mouth anytime they're interacting with others from outside their households, including in congregate outdoor settings where it is not possible to maintain physical distancing. Masks are not recommended for strenuous outdoor activity, anyone under the age of 2, anyone with a medical condition that is complicated or irritated by a facial covering, or anyone with difficulty breathing. Masks are not required when eating in outdoor settings. And this is the kicker here. Businesses and nonprofit and government entities may require customers or clients to wear masks. And the legislative body of each municipality may enact more strict local requirements regarding mask use than those set forth herein. And so I would like to start a discussion about doing just that. I've spoken with many people in the town over the last few days, and a large number of them are supportive of some kind of consistent position from the town of Brattleboro around wearing a face covering in a retail space or an indoor setting of some kind. And then there are some shades of gray around, should it be everywhere and, blah, blah, blah. But I think that oftentimes, we are just kind of forced to do what we're allowed to do by the state. And the governor has punted this one on to municipalities, for good or for ill. Burlington and South Burlington both passed resolutions last night requiring folks living there to wear face coverings inside retail establishments. I know that in Brattleboro, the stores that have opened up in the last couple of days, the ones that I've seen, the vast majority of them are requiring that from their customers anyway. But it's on a store-by-store basis. Each store owner, manager has to make that decision, has to feel that they have to back it up themselves. I think in this case, the town could enact a policy like the Burlington or South Burlington one. Or if we wanted to, we could go down the route of passing an emergency ordinance with a limited amount of time duration. So I just wanted to kick that off and see what you all thought. And it's really easy to wear a mask, just to go like this.
Indeed.
Mine's snakeskin, and I got it from the bee's nest. She has very fancy masks.
Oh, shapeshifters.
Liz.
My daughter made my mask, but it's Marimekko. It matches my kitchen. My first reaction was, yeah, we should be respectful of the storekeepers and workers and help them out by letting them not be the bad guys. Then I read an article about the mask ordinance in New York City, where it's being used as a cudgel to kind of rough people up. And so I don't really think it's something that would be enforceable. I mean, you really just don't want the mask police to walk around the streets of Brattleboro. But then I noticed that Stephanie had produced these signs that, list a number of things that they're asking customers to adhere to, and wearing a mask being one of them. And so to me, I think that spans the bridge between asking something to be an ordinance or asking something to be volunteer, but it takes it out of the realm of each individual storekeeper asking the customer to wear a mask. It's all of Brattleboro's commerce is asking with one voice, and I think that that's stronger, and I'm content with that.
Brendan.
I went downtown today to stop into the local businesses that were open and kind of gauge a feel of how does it feel to be open? How are people treating your space while you're open? And, what do you think, I didn't say, do you want us to demand masks, but I wanted to get a sense of whether or not people were being respectful and outside of 2 store owners, the clear message to me was that they wished that it would be mandated so it was out of their hands, that 3 of the shop owners I talked to have had to ask people to leave who were combative in the store. I didn't get permission from this very vocal and public shop owner downtown who I was speaking with outside today at length, but while we were outside speaking with our masks on, standing in the parklet in front of People's United, somebody drove by and screamed at us for wearing masks outside. And so, yeah, not a Vermonter, somebody with plates from a different state, but they screamed at myself and this very prominent shop owner who I should have asked permission to use his name, but he was actually against a mask ordinance, and then we were screamed at outside for wearing our masks and called stupid. My concern is that things are really emotional right now, that shopkeepers have had a lot on their plate, and that consumers are really emotional, and that asking people to be in charge of policing each other right now might not be the best bet. Over the weekend up in Ascutney, somebody was choked for not wearing a mask in a Jiffy Mart. I think it's very unfortunate that the governor did not just pass something down that everybody can get behind. And while many people are using the DBA created signs, not all stores are going to. And I just have a little bit of concern with people policing each other with high emotions, I guess is what I have to say. And so I want to help our shop owners, and I don't know the best way to do that, but I do know that out of everybody I spoke to, only 3 shop owners were like, I don't think it needs to be enforced. And one of those said, I don't really want to enforce it. It would have been easier if the governor did, kind of thing. So that was kind of wishy-washy. And so I just wanted to weigh in with that firsthand experience today.
Ian. And
let's let a member of the public speak first,
Where'd
please.
she go?
oh, I wasn't sure that was someone who wanted to speak. Amanda, were you raising your hand? Okay, well, let's do that.
Thank you. I appreciate this. I'm working with Stephanie on some of the work she's doing contacting local businesses. And so I've spoken with a lot of business owners, but also about this topic. But also as a Brattleboro resident, I've talked with a lot of friends and neighbors and other people, asking them about their opinions on masks. And I think that the most important thing for us to consider is how people feel downtown. Do people feel safe downtown? Do they feel safe enough to go down and do some shopping or pick up some takeout at a restaurant? And I'm hearing from friends that if they see people wearing masks, they feel safe. It's a visible sign that people are doing the right thing, that they're looking out for everybody's well-being. And I saw a number of people posting on Facebook on Monday that they were downtown. They were excited that shops were opening, but they were seeing a lot of people on Main Street without masks, and that was concerning to them. So I feel like we really need to normalize mask use because it's just such an important, simple, visible sign that everyone's being safe together in our community. It's also really important to remember, for anybody who doesn't know this yet, I hope you all do, but just in case, that the way masks work and cloth face coverings work is that my mask keeps you safe and your mask keeps me safe. So it's not enough for me to wear a mask to protect my own personal safety if I feel the need, because it doesn't work that way. The research shows that when you wear a mask, it keeps your germs from affecting other people. It doesn't so much keep theirs from affecting you. I hope that's clear. But anyway, that's the reason why we need to compel people to wear masks who wouldn't necessarily do it for themselves, but to do it for the rest of the community. And I also feel this needs to be sort of a top-down mandate, because I think there are many people who are just thinking, well, I don't want to wear a mask, so I'm not going to do it. Our community needs this. So thank you for hearing me speak.
Thanks, Amanda. And it's sometimes tough with this brave new world we're in with this go-to meeting, but the way we do it here at Brattleboro Selectboard is that if you want to, and no offense to Amanda, that was fine that you chimed in and Ian invited you, but just so it's not the wild, wild west, we're gonna let the board sort of talk this out a little bit, and then I'm gonna open it up to the public comment. So if you want a public comment, I see Peter Fishcase would like to chime in. So he'll be first, but let's do it that way from now on, if you don't mind. And Kate O'Connor, we see you too. So Ian, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I think I've thought a lot about this as well and talked to a lot of people. And I know that emotions are high for good reason. So I want to just add some things to this conversation for everyone, for the board to consider, and for the public to consider who's watching if you're going to speak. So first, the resolutions that were passed in Burlington and South Burlington are non-enforceable. So they are just essentially, for Brattleboro, it would be like a policy that says this is what we want. And what I think is very good about what both, and I'm from up there, so I try to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on. And one of the things I like that Burlington has done is they've been very clear about what they're asking their residents to do. And I think that we can take a note from that and provide clarity for Brattleboro citizens on what we are expecting them to do. And I think that clarity is going to be the most important thing, because an emergency ordinance, if it's not enforceable, I don't think it's the right thing for the board to do. We only erode the effectiveness and the seriousness of an ordinance if we pass one that is not enforceable. So I'd like to encourage the board to keep those points in mind as we continue the conversation, but I'm sure I'll talk again, but I'll stop for now.
Thank you, Ian. Has the Has everyone spoken to the subject except me? Or it's hard to
I
keep
guess I
track.
kind of introed it, but I didn't necessarily totally give my opinion.
I could give you the last word. Do you want me to chime in, and then you can have the last word?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
And we'll just put if you were listening to my opening comments, I think it's super important to be clear how I think the entire board, and just raise your hand if it's not true, but we're all believers in the mask. So we do not think that it's necessary to spend any time tonight convincing anyone of the scientific value and the protective effects of masks. And I'm seeing a lot of nods. There's a lot of good science behind it. Again, it's not to protect yourself, it's to protect others, and not from the molecules, it's from the spitules, for lack of a better term, from moisture drops that could be infected that fly through the air temporarily. So I think we're all clear on that, and so now the discussion seems to be more about the method by which to communicate that as a town and coordinating with businesses. For me personally, I'm very opposed to an ordinance, either regular, which takes a long time to remind everybody, or emergency, because I would agree with Ian that as a town, we've been trying to eliminate ordinances that historically have not been enforced because either they can't be enforced because of our lack of on the ground, feet on the ground resources with police, etc., or town staff, other town staff, or they're just dumb. I mean, we still have a couple ordinances on our books. We have one, if you don't know, about rock throwing. So it's illegal to throw rocks in Brattleboro still. But
Well,
we don't
I'm
worry
glad.
about it so much. I'm sorry?
I'm glad of that.
Well, my kids break that ordinance every day. Every day.
Mine too. But you know, that's the funny one. But just last year, everyone will recall that we removed an unjust ordinance of it wasn't panhandling, it was begging. It was the no begging ordinance. So a lot of correct citizen pressure and pressure from the ACLU, Vermont, etc., convinced the board that we should remove that ordinance, which was, you know, it was a long process and it takes time and money to do things like that. So I'm really not in favor of passing an ordinance, but something similar to Burlington is okay with me. I do have parts of me that question whether an edict from the town does much more than an edict from a shop owner, because I would point out that where people get reminded of and get straight about what the policy is in an enclosed space is going to be at the door. But I have no desire to, if this board has a desire to pass, I mean, I would favor language, something like policy. The Burlington, I think, used order, which sounds a little bit too, I don't know, a little bit too militaristic to me, but certainly a town policy, I certainly would not be opposed to, because it does, you know, give a little bit more weight, and I think would help some shop owners who are looking for that. I do think it's possible that some shops do not want this. But I think more people want it, and the fact that weighs on me more than the rights of anyone and the rights of shopkeepers even is the rights of people working in establishments that have been told that they have to wear masks, and yet they have to service people who might be flaunting that and willingly not wearing them. So this might help that situation, hopefully, because I think, frankly, that's rude and possibly dangerous, depending on if someone's infected or whatever. So while I wouldn't be the one to put this idea forward, because I kind of trust our community. I hear what Brandy's saying, and I also think about places like Hannaford, which has uneven. You know, they don't have a policy that everyone should go in, and when I watch people go in there, it's uneven. Luckily, there's a lot of room in there. So hopefully people are respectful once you're in there, because I keep reminding people it's really not about the mask so much as the proximity thing. Keep away from people even if you have the mask. And I sometimes personally get afraid, and I see this happen. When people have the mask on, they naturally get closer because they feel protected. So, or they feel like they're protecting people. So my strongest objection would be to ordinance. I don't know if it's necessary to ask Peter to chime in, maybe last or before public, but can you, I'll go ahead and just ask you to confirm that if we passed an ordinance, emergency or otherwise, would staff consider it to be enforceable on a practical level?
It would be difficult to enforce it consistently and continuously. So it's not that it would be unenforceable, it's that there would be times when it would appear to people that it was unenforceable or being ignored, which would not be the case, but we just, with the resources we would have available, it would depend at the moment when somebody was in a situation not wearing it, and a shopkeeper called that in, it would depend on the availability of a police officer, what else was going on in town at the time. And so we do have enforcement concerns related to a formal ordinance, but I hear the broader group of you rallying around at least a policy statement. Daniel had something more he wanted to say, and I think before I go further with trying to help you shape where you might go with this, I don't want to presume that that's the right answer, but I'll stop there, and then I can fill in the gap at the appropriate time.
Thanks, Peter. You know, the way I feel about this is that this is about public safety and about us, you know, taking responsibility for what we can control. And I would much rather the governor had issued an order, you know, directing towns and cities across the state to a consistent position, but that's not what happened. And so I think that we really need to take our responsibility for public safety. You know, I know that we take it seriously. I'm not saying that we're disregarding public safety, but I think this is a tool that we could use that might not seem to be ordinarily enforceable every single occasion, but I think it would greatly lessen the chance of us increasing the number of cases in Brattleboro as things start to reopen. At this point, we have 17 recorded cases as far as the health department data goes. You know, and a few weeks ago that was 16. We're not seeing huge jumps here, and I'm really thankful for that, because if you look at the map of Vermont and you see that town by town data, even though our case numbers are small, we're still in the higher part of that list. And with our position on the border of two states and as a place where we're going to be popular with tourists, I'm just concerned that if we don't have a consistent position on this one tool that we have to keep as many of our folks safe as possible, that we're going to be opening ourselves up to some problems. I think that, you know, if you remember back to the plastic bag ban, I remember going to stores shortly after that passed, and they had some kind of apologetic statement like, yeah, sorry, you know, the town requires you to, you know, to have this kind of bag and not this kind of bag, right? The town can be the bad guy sometimes, and that's okay, right? It's, you know, we have broad shoulders and we were elected to do this, right? We're not just 5 random people. We were 5 people that were elected to take responsibility for some of this stuff. And I want us to take responsibility for this.
Nicely said, Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think if it's all right with board members, I'm going to toss it over to public. First was Peter Case, and I will invite you to turn on your camera if you'd like, and at least turn on your button. Push the buttons. Thanks.
There we go. All right. Well, you know, thanks for the opportunity to speak on this. I know I've spoken with a few of the people who are part of the select board meeting tonight, and I think one of the lightning rod issues for me was watching a lot of these kind of, if you will, social media vigilantism going on about people who are unmasked, wearing masks, not wearing masks, whatever it is. And what is it going to take to kind of restore consumer confidence? And I think however you want to word it, but I think the town has to be the heavy here, because the governor definitely did not step up and, in my estimation, act accordingly by mandating a mask or creating a policy that says when you go into a retail space, a restaurant, that you should indeed be wearing a mask that covers both your mouth and your nose. And I think that is one of the things I would like this select board to consider, is passing a clear and concise policy, whatever you want to call it, that would address that issue, so that the retailers, as they begin to open up their shops, have that one less thing that they have to worry about, that they can basically turn and say, well, the town, the municipality has basically said that in the town of Brattleboro, downtown, Putney Road, wherever, throughout the whole township of Brattleboro has require you to wear a mask. I think putting it on the shop owners at this point in time, as they try to untangle this whole thing, I've been saying it over and over again, nobody pandemics well, and nobody is, we're all trying to fix the car while we're moving. And these policies, maybe it's just a policy that goes into place for 30 days. If going under the guise of it takes 21 days to create a habit, maybe it's a 30-day policy that this board can then look at in 3 weeks to see how are we doing. Is consumer confidence back up, or is it being restored? I also agree with Daniel and his assessment on public safety. I mean, it really is an issue when you see somebody coming at you that is not wearing a mask. It's slightly horrifying as that person walks towards you. I'm not sure why it's such a lightning rod issue when it seems pretty cut and dry to me. I'm not sure why it wasn't passed as part of our executive branch that runs the state. But unfortunately, it has been opened up to this municipality to make its own decision. And I would advocate that we make that decision to the affirmative and make sure that our citizens are wearing masks when they walk inside of a retail confined space. And I'll leave it with that.
Thank you.
All right.
Peter. So I think I'll just go to my next contestant, which I believe is Kate O'Connor, who I think is on the phone. Or no, I might have that wrong.
Can you hear me?
No, Kate's here.
Kind of.
You have video to share?
I have no video.
Okay.
I don't want to be on video. It's a sad sight. Can you?
Go right ahead.
First, I just want to make a quick comment about the sign that Elizabeth talked about that DBA put together. And it has a couple of things on it. It has stay 6 feet away, wash your hands, wear a mask. And that was guidance by the Vermont Department of Health. So that wasn't anything that just a random bunch of people have, put together. I just want everyone to know when they see that sign that it's actually an authoritative body that put those suggestions together. This was not on tonight's agenda, so I'm not prepared to speak about it on behalf of the chamber. So what I'd like to ask is, I'm hoping you won't make a decision tonight. And what I would hope is that when it is on the agenda, we could get a heads up, because I think what you need is some feedback from the business community, and just to hear a little bit about the pros and cons and the challenges that come with some of what they're facing, including the whole mask wearing issue. So I guess I'm just asking, urging you not to make any kind of decision tonight. And if you put it back on the agenda, if you could give us the heads up so that we can engage, and I'm sure Stephanie at DBA would help, we can engage the business owners to come back to you and just give you a sense of what they're thinking and why they're thinking what they're thinking. Because whatever you do is gonna, they're the people that are gonna have to deal with it from a policing sense, from a providing mask sense. So I would just hope that you would, have a conversation or listen to the business community, and the chamber would want to help you with that.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. Are you still on the line?
Yes.
Okay. I think I have a follow-up clarification question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Does that apply regardless of how we approach this? In other words, if it's a simple policy voted on tonight, do you think it's necessary, or are you speaking of in our consideration of an ordinance? Because it feels like the board is leaning towards a fairly simple policy, which pretty much aligns with what a lot of stores are doing. Do you think there's going to be quite a few stores that will not want the town to have a policy?
I think we need to ask the businesses. And I think the problem with talking about it tonight, again, it was not on the agenda. So we didn't have a chance to even have this conversation. I've had many conversations with business owners who want a mask ordinance or a mask, for the governor to say you have to wear a mask if you're a customer. And I've also had conversations with business owners that say it's nobody's business but mine because they're coming into my store. So, I don't want to say yes or no, but I know that there's some people that don't even think it's appropriate for anybody to tell them that they have to have somebody coming into their store and they have to make that person wear a mask. So I just think it's kind of unfair to be having this conversation when no one knew it was going to take place. I didn't even know it was going to take place. I just am a nerd and I watch all your meetings. So there are people out there that I think you need to hear from.
Not to put you on the spot, but I was going to ask Daniel if he wanted to respond, and I saw your hand, Ian. But
I see Brandy's hand as well.
Oh, sorry. Who wants to speak first? Who feels stronger?
I'm guessing Brandy. Go ahead,
That's
Brandy.
just always how I feel. Well, it's good to hear you, Kate. It's good to hear your voice. And I hear everything that you're saying. The one thing that if hypothetically a shop owner said to me, which one did today, that it's nobody's business, it's their shop, I guess my one, how you have that reactional pushback, my reactional pushback would say, if you let somebody in here with no mask on because it's your shop and they get somebody else sick because they were an asymptomatic carrier, then what does that mean? At what point is it more than just your shop and yet a publicly participated in location? That's my reaction. That's my quick draw gut comeback that came out of my mouth when I heard that hypothetical statement.
Daniel or Ian?
Ian.
Who feels stronger?
Go.
Come on, guys.
All right, very quickly, I know Kate knows this, but it would be 2 weeks. Be 2 weeks till we can make a decision. And that's too long, right? Everything is opening up now. I feel like this is the moment we got to make a decision. And if we're to address that point, really, we have three options: do nothing, pass a policy, pass an ordinance, an emergency ordinance. I don't really see. I don't see it being worth delaying that long. That's my position. Oh, temporary. That's interesting. Peter, how does that work, Tim?
Yeah, we can't respond to chat. That's just, I'm going to draw the line there. But
you're right.
I can't
even
see the chat.
Oh,
now I
so
can't.
Daniel.
So I feel that at this point, it is the responsibility of the town to do what it can to take care of the townspeople.
Right.
And within the policy decisions that we make to do that, there's going to be some pushback, here and there, and that's just how it goes. I think that the better thing for the people of Brattleboro and the people that come to visit Brattleboro, right? Because we're not only talking about the residents of Brattleboro, but we're talking about the residents of all the towns that live around us, that come here, and then they go back to their homes and their families. You know, I just think that we need to take responsibility. And if that means being the bad guy for a couple of people, that's okay. I'd rather be the bad guy and keep our numbers really small, keep our families safe, keep our relatives, you know, in the realm of the living. And if people get upset about that, you know, then they can elect somebody else next year. And that's
We are
okay.
the health officers.
Yeah. And then, you know, in terms of the timescale, like, yeah, so it's a problem, Kate, that we didn't have this warned because it came out on Friday from the governor's addendum, you know, so it wasn't possible to get it on this agenda. But I felt like it would be irresponsible for us not to have a conversation about it, given how rare it is that we are given the option to differ from the state in some kind of matter of law. And I think that, you know, one option is we could pass a policy tonight if we can work up some wording, or we could, you know, warn a special meeting and either kick around a policy or an ordinance. And Peter's going to tell me what I got wrong.
No, not at all. May I, Tim?
Yeah, you may, depending on what you're doing.
Well, I want to acknowledge that there are members of the public who have spoken who would like to speak again, and two who have not yet spoken who are waiting their turn patiently. But there's a little structure I think I can bring to what remains of this conversation that I think will be helpful. I want to make crystal clear for the record that while it is unusual to have this sort of a discussion, without it being a specifically warned item. I had a conversation earlier today with Bob Fisher very explicitly about this situation and the fact that the board might actually take action tonight, not just have a conversation about it. And for a variety of different reasons based on, you know, the COVID-19 situation and the emergency orders and the declaration of emergency that are all in place, in addition to overriding statutory authority of the board to take action to protect public health and safety and welfare, it is not inappropriate. It is unusual, but not inappropriate. It's certainly not illegal for you to act this evening if the group of you feels it's urgent enough to warrant that. And I'm hearing that the group of you does feel it's urgent enough. I've had a lot of communication with individual members of the board over the last couple of days about this matter, and sat back to hear you do what you've just done as a collegial governing body needs to do from time to time with a tough issue of, you know, finding, is there a way forward that you can rally around? And I don't think you're 100% of the way there yet, but what I, as the person who tries to help you deal with these sorts of things, needed to see was whether there were 3 or more of you who felt this was important enough and urgent enough that some action tonight was warranted. And I'm seeing that general consensus. I don't know if there's all 5 of you feeling that way, but I'm seeing certainly 3 of you feeling that way. So I want to let you know that in preparation for this moment, because I knew that you disagreed with one another in the details, but you all were ready to have a conversation like this tonight. And I knew we weren't prepared with normal backup. But if this had landed in a place where it didn't appear that you thought it was appropriate to move forward with anything, then this moment wouldn't have come and I wouldn't have spoken. But because of the general consensus I see forming, I have a document I can share with you because I thought it would be not appropriate for us to be doing this shooting from the hip. Burlington and South Burlington did do this last night. So I've used Burlington's document and I modified it in a way that is not an ordinance. It reads like their resolution read, but it's a lot simpler. And if you're inclined to take a look at it and consider whether or not that's something that 3 or 4 or 5 of you wish to proceed with, we can put it up on the board. And if you prefer not to do that, then wait and take my direction.
I'd like to see it.
I'd like to see it.
Is that unanimous from the board?
Yes.
Ian? Or-
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah, sure. Sure, let's take a look.
How do
Yes,
you do that?
although I kind of feel like I want to go to the public, and I also want to check in with our interpreters. Because it's 8:30 now, and I'm wondering if they feel like they can go a little further without a break, because I think we took a break around this time last time.
Yeah.
Elizabeth
Yeah.
is giving me a thumbs up. I know what that one means at least. Thank you. So a little bit further, we're gonna try not to, we do have other business tonight, but this is very important. So Peter, you want to add one thing?
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry. Just I think a break is a great idea, and it also will help so that people can see this language. It's
Okay.
a 2-page document, so I'm gonna need to ask Patrick whether he can put it up to just sit there on the screen in 2 pages. I'm not sure he'll be able to do that. It might have to be one at a time.
While we're
But
taking
at
our break?
least the first page of it would be
While we're taking our break?
people could digest it.
Are you saying while we're taking our break?
Yeah, I'm saying that the audio could be shut off. People could be reading this thing while we take a break, and then you'd be prepared to have a discussion about it and hear more from the public about it when we come back, if you're inclined to do that.
Should we let
I'm
the public
inclined, but
speak?
I personally am inclined to go to the public first and then do the
Sure.
break with the document, because
Okay.
the public has something in their brain and it applies to what we were talking about before, and to take that break might ruin that. So Lida or Leda, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your first name perfectly. Do you want to come online if you still want to speak? If not, you can just type in the chat.
Oh, chat.
No, I don't see Leda coming on. So going once, how about, oh, yeah, she's gonna come on.
Okay.
And I'll take this opportunity to remind everybody, please, for my own sanity, do not treat the chat like chat. This is not Facebook, this is not Twitter. Do not say, right on Daniel, for instance, even though Daniel loves to see things like that. It's gonna
Now
make
it's on the record.
crazy.
I was trying to be very serious.
Don't
Like,
send Daniel any heart.
I think he's blushing.
And it,
It's just very warm in here.
if you're still having trouble, I can go to Fish first. Fish, of course, is the nickname of Peter Case, just so everyone knows. Peter, do you want to chime in? Yeah.
Yeah, so I put this in the chat as well, and I know Kate brings up a good point that maybe it wasn't warned properly. I think Peter brought up a really good point that I mean we're living in certainly some screwy, weird, uncertain times, and maybe if this board could make that decision that saying this will be what we have, we'll put this policy however you wanted to word it. Tim, you worded it in a way that I thought was thoughtful. I'm curious to read what Peter's going to put up on the screen, but even if it's just temporary to get you through the next 2 weeks, as Tim pointed out, it would be 2 weeks. And I think as stores begin to open up and as we see the "We're open" signs in the windows of our retailers throughout Brattleboro, again, going back to the restoring consumer confidence as they walk into a place to shop, even if it's just temporary for 2 weeks until you can vote on something that might be a little bit more permanent on the next meeting. But I think it's critical to have something in place tonight. That's my 2 cents, and hopefully Lida is ready to go.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah, this is my first time. Sorry for my inappropriate egging on Daniel.
It's a weird thing. Could you just identify yourself and give a little context?
Yeah, I'm Lida Scheintaub. I'm from Dosa Kitchen, one of the owners. We opened February 1st on 34 Elliott Street and closed March 14th, I think. So,
welcome.
Just getting used to being on this. So, yeah, I didn't catch the very beginning of the conversation on the mask. So I'm sorry if I missed something and I'm speaking to it, but I just wanted to say that I'm really in favor of the mask. It's really problematic to have people right near you and not have a mask. I mean, it just seems complete common sense. And I feel like Vermonters have a lot of common sense. The other day I checked, there were no new infections. That's amazing. No new deaths. Like, I really want to keep this up and show the rest of the country that we are really doing a great job, and other people can too. And the masks, there's just so much science that the masks keep people from getting infected. I'm not going to go to any store that doesn't require masks. So that's like, they lost my business. I know a lot of other people feel the same way. And I can't understand why we wouldn't do it. Like, there just doesn't seem to make sense. Like, we're only doing curbside pickup. We have a very good routine going. The minute I cracked open the door a little to get air, because we don't have windows that open, somebody came in, and he came in without a mask, without gloves, his company from Connecticut. And I said, please leave the restaurant. And I was a little abrupt, and I went and apologized just for saying it abruptly. And he got hostile, like, not physically or anything, but it was just very bad, and it ruined my day. And I wasn't sorry that I said it. It was just like, I didn't mean to be mean to him. But so you have to get in these situations all the time of like, oh, I'm a nice person, I don't want to be mean. Oh, he's putting out his hand so I can give him the food. Oh, wait, no, I can't do that. And there's just so many situations, so many small details where you can go wrong, and then you wind up infected. And we're 4 hours from New York City without traffic, and there is no traffic now. So that's really close. So that's just my 2 cents. And there's a lot of situations that I've been in already, and I hardly go out except for the restaurant, that I don't feel comfortable. So I really appreciate that Daniel's brought this up, and I think there's an urgency. Like, I don't want to wait 2 weeks for you guys to vote on this. I want people to be safe now. I want to keep our community safe.
Thank you. Lita, it turns out I knew you, and I didn't realize that. Thanks for chiming in.
Yeah, thanks for listening to me.
Yeah, can I just get a quick clarification from Peter? Because Lita has a restaurant establishment. I don't think the way Burlington's is worded that they're covered. They're excluded from it because of when the governor does allow sit-down restaurants, it's obviously impossible to eat with your mask on. However, I'm wondering if it's too complicated for us to say for takeout service, they should be included.
So again, what I prepared not in furtherance of any prior direction from you. I prepared it in my best guess of what might be middle ground that you would rally around. And I don't know whether you will feel comfortable with this or not, but I actually took out the exceptions of certain kinds of businesses. I thought that was kind of odd. There's an obvious practical consideration that if you're going to drink from a glass or put a fork or spoon in your mouth, you're not wearing a mask at that moment. But if first of all, it's irrelevant right now because restaurants aren't open. And second of all, when restaurants do come open, I would think it might be that people sit at a table and wear masks until there's a time when they're actually consuming.
Right.
That's a safe thing to do. So what I did, just to try to keep this as generic as possible and not address, excuse me, nearly as much granular detail as they did in Burlington, was just say, if you're an establishment that's open to the public to sell services or products, that employees and visitors in those settings need to be wearing masks.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of nods, and that's certainly fine. I personally thought that the bars and restaurants made a little bit of sense, but I didn't get the hotel thing. But
and again, I don't know that I've hit the mark that the 5 of you will feel is the right mark, but it's a place to start talking about it in detail.
I'd rather look at it.
The only person there, Millicent, wanted to possibly say something. I'm trying to find her comment. Do you want to sneak something in real quick, Millicent? Otherwise, I do want to go to our break and look at the document, and I can still come back to public after that. And Kate wanted to as well. Okay, so Millicent first, and then we'll hear a quick comment from Kate, and then we'll move on.
So whichever way that you vote, I would suggest that there's additional ways that the town could support so that the stores feel that they're behind them through a lot of visual messages. One of the things that can happen is that somebody could come in without a mask and they don't know where to get a mask, and are they then forced to buy a mask from the store? And so if the town put either possibly supplied masks or had signs in public places that this is the way we do things, folks. So yeah, there's an ordinance, but there's also a social feeling that everybody accepts that this is the way that you're supposed to behave. People sometimes are outsiders, come to a place and and can be influenced when they want to be acceptable. And if we don't just leave it up, we send messages visibly that we all agree to this, that this is the right thing to do, to wear masks. So it's not just an ordinance that you're going to get arrested, but we also are encouraging people. Maybe we supply the masks and we tell people all around the town that this is how we do things.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to take a look at Peter's document. The Burlington order, as they call it, requires businesses to provide masks. So I'll just leave that at that. That's just a point of information. And I just want to go to Kate real quick before we take a break / research session.
Yeah, this will be quick. I just want to make one thing perfectly clear. I'm not advocating for one thing or another, because again, I have not had a chance to talk to all the businesses involved in the chamber. I would ask that if you do something tonight, consider if it's doable for the businesses. We have little businesses, we have big businesses, and some things are easier for one business to do than another. And I think that was my concern when not really talking to businesses. Just make sure whatever policy you do, you take into consideration that we're dealing with some people who have the ability to buy masks, some people who don't. So that's my big concern, is that there are a multitude of different businesses out there. So whatever you do, just make it doable. I think there's a lot of frustration because the state has been so, they say they're going to have guidance and then they don't. So I would, that's, and there's been no input from the business community to the state on what the procedure should be. So that's all I'm concerned about, really, is doing something doable. Whatever you do, make it doable.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. And I have to say personally, the lack of notice brings up, dashes together for me the two really strong principles that I hold, which is public health and open meeting laws and respecting people's right to chime in for these meetings. But we are in a very unusual circumstance. So we're going to push forward a little bit and take a look at a document that Peter and his foresight, sounds like, has put together. And I know I'm going to have a problem with the kid thing. I'm just betting. We'll see. We'll see.
Patrick, can you put the document up, and are you able to put it up?
If it's possible. Thank you, Patrick, for trying at least. Do we have a verdict?
Do we have to do anything or just sit here?
Oh, there it is.
There it is. Okay, never mind.
And look good.
Can you make it the side by side? Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I see.
Cool. And I know that I can zoom in. I know how to do that, but does everybody think they have a handle on
I see how to zoom in, but how? Oh, I see how to scroll now. Okay. Yep.
Okay. So Did we want to take a break to coincide with this and give our interpreters
Sure.
a break?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So I guess we won't have our sign up saying we're taking a break, but because I'm going to read this over. So let's officially take a break. Everyone, let's see, go on mute. And if you want to, we could just turn off our own cameras, right? Yeah. Let's take a break until, oh, I don't know, 8:55. I have 8:46. Is that what everybody has? 8:55. Thank you. I was going to suggest, let me call the meeting back to order at
Oh, that's better.
8:55. And I just realized that I was thinking we should read the document for the interpreters because they couldn't see the doc very well. But I don't have it in front of me. Daniel, do you?
Oh, now we do.
Okay.
Daniel, you started this mess.
You want me to read the whole thing?
No, we could take turns.
Okay, I love it. All right, here we go. You ready?
Okay.
We'll do paragraph by paragraph.
Before you do that, sorry to interrupt, this is one of the interpreters. My comment, just to clarify, was not that it has to be reread per se. What I'm saying is anytime a document is shared on screen, our pictures become very small, so the interpretation is less accessible. So sorry if that was confusing. You're welcome to read it without it screen shared. That would be great.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Oh, God.
Then we need to, well, did you email the document, Peter?
I did not. I thought you didn't need that. If you do need it, I'll be happy to do it. Or I can read it out loud.
I didn't personally need it, but now I need it because we can't have the interpreters be seen without being able to read it in our hands. I don't know if this is going to work. I can do it here too. I don't know if Daniel or other board members would be able to do it.
I mean, I think Peter was offering to read it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Is that what I heard?
I could read it, and while I'm doing that, Patrick could email it to the 5 select board members at least. That doesn't solve it for the public, but at least you have a copy that you could refer to in front of you.
Sorry to make you do that, but I just cannot.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've got to have people understand what it says.
Yep. So I'm going to read it in its entirety. And before I do that, I just want to say, sort of fulfilling out the thing I started to say earlier, that I reviewed this with Bob, right? So I saw this moment coming. I thought it might be necessary. So I went to the Burlington document. I slimmed it down to what I thought was its essence. And I went over it with Bob Fisher to make sure that it's legally proper. And Bob assured me that it is. And so without further ado, the town of Brattleboro Select Board. Sorry?
Sorry, Liz raised her hand right before.
Liz, you're unmute.
I just wanted an explanation of this is not an ordinance, this is a resolution.
Yeah, thank you for that. So actually, one bit more about sort of the odd way that this unfolded. Because I didn't know where you might want to go as a group, I actually prepared this version and I prepared an emergency ordinance version. And so the emergency ordinance version is irrelevant. This is styled as a resolution, and embedded in the resolution is an emergency order of the board. And that follows exactly the format of what they did in Burlington. If you are comfortable with that as a group, that's good. And if you're not, we can work through the process of amending it as needed. Bob should still be on the line, I believe, too. He was going to be available to us in case we got into a situation where you needed legal advice about this tonight. So I believe he's still on the phone.
If you can hear me, I am on the phone, but I'm not sure you can.
Yeah, we can hear you fine, Bob.
Okay, great.
Called you up had we known you were here all the time.
It seemed like before when I went to speak, you couldn't hear me, but now it seems better. So that's great. And I just, before Peter reads it, Peter accurately stated our conversation earlier, but I wanted to address Kate's concern that this was not warned. But remember, we're under as a state of emergency. And given the governor's order on Friday, that did not give us the time to put this into the agenda, and hence the nature of it being either an emergency resolution that you pass, or if you were going the ordinance route, which it sounds like you're not, there is the power to do an emergency ordinance as an emergency. So that may be moot given your consensus that I see or am hearing tonight.
Thank you, Bob. Go ahead, Pete. Yeah.
Town of Brattleboro Selectboard Resolution. Be it resolved by the Select Board of the Town of Brattleboro, Vermont, as follows. And then there's a header on it. COVID-19 emergency order, wearing face coverings required in retail stores. Whereas the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommend the use of simple cloth face coverings to slow the spread of COVID-19 coronavirus and to help people who may unknowingly have the virus from transmitting it to others. Help prevent people who may unknowingly have the virus from transmitting it to others. And whereas the Vermont Department of Health recommends that all Vermonters wear cloth face coverings when outside of the home to help slow the spread of COVID-19. And whereas Governor Phil Scott and the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development have issued the following instructions in conjunction with the governor's executive orders regarding COVID-19. Quote, employees must wear face coverings over their nose and mouth when in the presence of others. In the case of retail cashiers, a translucent shield or sneeze guard is acceptable in lieu of a mask. Businesses and nonprofit and government entities may require customers or clients to wear masks, end quote, while on their premises. And, quote, the legislative body of each municipality may enact more strict local requirements regarding mask use than those set forth herein, end quote. And whereas COVID-19 remains a health hazard to the residents of Brattleboro and a significant threat to vulnerable populations. And whereas wearing a face covering is an important act we can do in an effort to protect others from an infection that we may not even know we have. And now, therefore, be it resolved that this select board hereby issues the following COVID-19 emergency order. Again, the header, wearing face coverings required in retail stores. Followed by 4 sections, I believe, 4 substantive sections. Let me double check that. Yes, 4 substantive sections. The first is requirement to wear face covering. Starting May 20th, 2020, all establishments located in the town of Brattleboro that invite the public into their premises for the purpose of receiving services, purchasing products, or otherwise transacting business shall require both staff and customers or visitors to wear cloth face coverings or face shields over their nose and mouth while inside the establishment. Exceptions. The CDC advises that cloth face coverings should not be placed on young children under age 2, anyone who has trouble breathing, or anyone who is unconscious, incapacitated, or otherwise unable to remove the mask without assistance. Posting of requirement. Each establishment is individually responsible to post signage at the entrance and at other appropriate locations, stating that customers or visitors are required to wear face coverings by order of the Brattleboro Select Board. Effective period. This order shall remain in effect until the Brattleboro Select Board amends, rescinds, or suspends this order, or until the governor declares an end to the COVID-19 state of emergency in Vermont, whichever occurs first. Adopted by the Brattleboro Select Board at its meeting on May 19th, 2020, and then it has lists your 5 names.
Thank you.
Thank you for reading that. And for preparing it. I have some comments, but anyone want to jump in? Daniel?
Just wanted to question retail stores. You know, the way that you've described the places where people would wear face coverings goes beyond retail stores.
Yeah.
So whether having retail stores in there is sort of misleading.
I think that's a really good point. I felt awkward as I was reading it that I realized that after broadening the terminology in the body of it in order to keep it simpler, I didn't go back and change the header. So I think we could just strike in retail stores and just say wearing face coverings required, and let the body of the document speak to when they're required.
Okay. Ian had his hand up.
Yeah, so two thoughts. One, as we amend it at the end, could that be, could we warn this for the next meeting as an opportunity for people to voice their feelings about this and give them an opportunity to speak? And then if we need to, we could amend this in any way on what, June 2nd? And then, go ahead.
Oh, why don't you complete your thought, but then I'd like to just make a comment about the agenda.
Yeah, and maybe this is to Bob or Peter. So if we're not providing masks and we're not requiring stores to provide masks, I'm a little confused if that could become an issue with someone coming in and not having one at all. Yeah, was that discussed at all in your conversation, Peter, with Bob?
It was. I want to just give a really quick answer, and then Bob can take a deeper dive if he thinks that this isn't an adequate answer. But he and I discussed exactly that question earlier today and came to the conclusion that it was like ongoing normal requirements that you have to have a pair of shoes on when you go into certain businesses, most businesses. So, you know, if you have to have a shirt and shoes, and if you don't have a certain shoes, you can't go in, then this would be a similar requirement, but just for the unusual circumstances of each time. As a practical matter, it's also the case that I don't believe the town can supply enough masks to be the supplier. So the question you'd have to consider is whether to require the businesses to have a stock of masks available the way that we do at the town's facilities, since we're requiring people who come into the town's facilities to have a mask on.
And this is Bob Fisher. I agree with that, but I don't read this resolution as requiring businesses or the town to provide the masks. It's just saying everyone needs to be wearing masks when you're in a business or a retail establishment or place of services. So it's incumbent on people to have masks, and I think there's a great availability of whether cloth masks or other types of masks that people can get, and the cloth ones can be obviously reused and washed. So I don't see that as being a liability on the town should the town pass such a resolution.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Yeah, Brandy?
This probably wouldn't be written into the ordinance, but just as a side note, just as we had the little cards letting people who were asking for money downtown know where they could get food and get other services, we could probably reach out to mutual aid. I know a few people in town, and have cards or flyers available for businesses on where people can get cloth masks, because I know myself, I've gotten them from at least 3 different local people making them, and I know there's dozens and dozens of more. And many times when we're asking people to cease one behavior, we have offered solutions to that behavior, and there's no reason we can't do the same in this circumstance.
Thanks, Brandy. Liz, and then I'd like to chime in real quick.
Yeah, I agree with Brandy, and I know that BAMA, which I'm a part of, there's a lot of mask sewers in town. So if we'd like to publicize avenues to get masks, that's a great way to do it, Brandy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you both. I just want to point out to anybody listening and who had listened to Peter read the resolution that Burlington's does require businesses to provide masks, and it's in the resolution. But I think this is a better solution because, I mean, businesses, it doesn't preclude businesses from providing masks.
Right.
And anybody out in the world today who doesn't have a mask is, I don't know, in my opinion, slightly clueless and can go fashion something or just wait outside. I don't think we can police that. Liz?
Well, as Kate and Stephanie were saying, some businesses are really tiny, and it would be an imposition to mandate that they do this, and people should have the wherewithal to find their own masks.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to go back and make a suggestion for tonight, and because Ian mentioned our next meeting, and this is a little bit out of the box, but I know Peter has tipped me off that we're heading towards a very late meeting, and we both feel that we can postpone the water and sewer commissioner work because that's a chunk of stuff. My suggestion, and obviously this is asking a lot of the board members and some other folks too, would be that we come back in 1 week and actually do the check-in that Ian was proposing. Because if we do this tonight, it'll go in effect immediately, correct, Peter? So there's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road, and that will make me feel better about Kate's urging us to hear back from businesses. So I think it would be fair to hear some feedback after a week, and we'll be able to do our town business. Agenda number 9 had 3 items in it, and it's going to take a while, and it's very important stuff. So that would be my suggestion. How do people feel about that? Liz, everybody's nodding.
I just want to understand what you're saying. You're saying we should pass this tonight and then revisit it in a week, or wait a week?
Right. I have the same question because I have a concern.
I'm saying I think we're all agreed that we're moving towards passing it tonight.
Okay.
I'm suggesting we move agenda item 9, which has 3 complicated components, not to our June meeting, but to next week in May, May 26th. And at that meeting, we could do a check-in with the community, allow some feedback for what's gone well, what hasn't gone well. It doesn't have to be a big deal if it's going well, obviously, but it just gives that opportunity for people who felt they were caught off guard by it. Liz?
I don't think anybody's going anywhere, so we could have another meeting.
There are things going on in life that are not select.
Great.
And Daniel?
Yeah, I just want to say real quick that, you know, by all means, let's pass it tonight, see how it goes, and then take some further feedback next Tuesday. And I just want to kind of let the public know that, like, between now and next Tuesday, it's not like the town's going to be sitting on its hands being like, oh, there's nothing we can do about this. This is going to need to be something that we're going to roll out, and then we're going to need to evolve a little bit as we do it. And I think communication piece is really important, and making sure that people have equitable access to things to cover their face with. You know, it doesn't need to be something super fancy. And you know, as Brandy mentioned, there are a number of folks in town that are producing masks. I also think that, like, businesses and organizations that are inviting folks into their place are going to be, there's an imperative to provide something. So we're not going to demand that they do provide it, but I think that in the same way that, you know, any place of business or provider of a service is going to want to provide a pleasant environment that is also safe, this will be a component of that. So I'm not too worried, but I think that we're going to need to, like, figure it out as we go along this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm super up for figuring it out.
And so I kind of lost track of who had made comments. I had a couple comments on the resolution itself, but who wanted to make a comment? Did everyone go?
Yes.
Oh, So as I warned you, I would urge us to possibly tweak it. I understand that the CDC recommendation is under 2 is not required, but I can tell you from a father of a 2.5-year-old that under 3 is impossible to keep a mask on, and we might even want to consider saying children under 5, to be honest, because
I'm fully in favor of that.
yeah, because the transmission among children is not yet even proven that it's a big deal.
Well,
Transmission, catching could be.
Yeah.
But it's really like a parental issue with, like, a parent might not, with a recalcitrant child of 3.5, they might not be able to enter the store. I don't know. That's just my own biased feeling, and Brandy seems to agree.
I definitely agree with the challenge of keeping a mask on. With the new inflammatory disease that's going around, I wouldn't want to make any kind of comments about the health or transmission between children, but I think the fact that somebody 3 and under is going to be tugging at their mask, which kind of defeats the purpose of it, is common sense enough to any of us. And 5 and under is fine. My 5-year-old is just now, I can say, remember, it covers your nose, and he'll leave it alone. But I think below that, let's just be honest, they're pretty feral. I'm sorry. If you haven't had children, I'm sorry if you're offended, but those of us who have birthed them, they're feral. So.
Feral. Okay. That's colorful term.
Yeah, that's Brandy. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so I did promise someone on chat who would like to just make a quick comment. Peter, want to jump in here one last time?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I just kind of wanted, Peter sort of touched on it with the town attorney. And, you know, I like what Peter Elwell brought forth. I agree with the issues with the child. Just speaking as a citizen of Brattleboro, I, for one, would truly appreciate this effort being pushed forward as a part so that it does take some of the onus off the town. I do not believe that retailers, restaurant owners need to supply the masks. I think that we have an ordinance already in place that say no shoes, no shirt, no service. And if somebody walks in, that retail shop does not need to supply those people with shirts or shoes. So I think that when we're considering this, that we consider that as well. I'm not a fan of putting any extra pressure on any retail operation within the town. So I just wanted to put that out there as a matter of it's just a matter of something else to think about. I don't think that we need to put that on. The municipality is something different. I feel that that's covered by our taxes. So I think it's okay for them to supply those masks, but retailers, restaurant owners, no. So I'll leave you with that.
Okay. Did anybody else have a comment? I have one, Liz.
I just wanted to reiterate that I will speak to the Bama people in the morning and see how we can publicize mask collection and mask distribution.
I was going to say mask Brattleboro, but then I didn't know if that was creepy. Like a mask Brattleboro movement.
I think it'll be good for people to go to Bama as a resource of mutual aid.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I've received a message that possibly somebody named Michael might want to chime in on something. And if that's true, Michael, now's your chance. But if not, Stephanie, do you want to jump in while we wait for that?
Sure, thanks. I can share with you information that might be useful in creating the sign underneath where the mask used to be. Ask us something to the effect of, we'll happily supply one, or something to that effect. And I got enough pushback from the business owners. That was the only sticking point on that sign. Enough pushback that they weren't comfortable having a supply for everyone that walked in the door. So in getting that pushback, Amanda Whitman, who is now working with me at DBA, she and I looked into how can we figure out a mask program like we did the bag program. And Amanda really kind of hit a wall in all of the different areas that she looked into. So Elizabeth, I'm saying all that because I would love to work with you if you find a avenue through BAMA that we didn't already knock on that door, that we would gladly figure out how to distribute the masks so that the businesses could
Great.
supply them. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you, Stephanie. An interesting situation all around. So
Hello,
how,
Tim.
what's that?
This is Michael from the Works Cafe. How you guys doing today?
Michael, go ahead. Thank you.
So I missed the first half of this meeting. I got 3 little kids I was dealing with, and so starting tomorrow, if a guest walks in the cafe to get a cup of coffee, are we instructing them to have a mask on? Is that what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yes,
If we-
you're getting those nods if you can see us. However, I'll remind everybody that this is there's not going to be repercussions for that from the town level.
So how do we educate the people in town? Is that going to be like in the Reformer? Is it going to be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? Letting these people know, because signs in the door don't work. I'm the district manager. I oversee 4 cafes in 3 different states right now. So how are we educating someone that comes in real quick, buys a cup of coffee or a pastry or, you know, stuff like that? What's the best way?
It's a good question.
Yep, Peter.
Thank you. So I think it was you, Tim, who used the phrase bumpy, or the term bumpy, a little bit ago. I think we can all expect tomorrow to be bumpy. This did come up suddenly, and some people will be paying attention to it and some people will not, and it might take part of the day before some people even learn about it. But based on the participation that we have had and the coverage of these meetings by the media, I would expect that you know, certainly the radio stations hopefully will be able to, you know, have some push this out. The town is going to push this out through a news release and through our daily update on COVID. I would ask now, Stephanie, if you're still online with us, if you could use your network through the DBA, and Kate, yours through the Chamber of Commerce, to push a copy of this out with whatever messaging you choose to add, or none. Even if you just want to say the board adopted this last night, if you have questions, call the town. You know, that's on us. We'll deal with that. There are ways in which we can make sure this information gets widely out into the community. Based on when the reformer goes to bed, normally coverage of these meetings shows up on Thursday, not on Wednesday. So I think probably in the reformer, this will be a significant story, I would hope, but not until Thursday. And we just all need to do what a community does, which is, you know, spread the word as best we can tomorrow, and recognize Thursday will be a little better and Friday a little better than that. Hopefully this becomes the new normal that the board is asking the community to embrace.
Daniel?
I was wondering whether or not the sort of big LED boards that the fire department uses could have a nice clear message on, you know, Putney Road and Western Ave.
Yeah, we'll work out the details of that in the morning. I'm not sure exactly like the optimum placement, but we'll get a message on there. We'll get they're called variable message boards. We'll get those out.
Great.
To spread this word.
Okay.
I got one question, if you guys don't mind.
Real quick. Yeah, thank you.
So at the Works Cafe, we have plexiglass in front of the registers, and then we have plexiglass at the expo station where guests pick up their food. From what I've read in Vermont, it says that a cashier does not have to be wearing a mask. We have instructed all our employees to always be wearing a mask. So is that in a retail store that they don't have to wear a mask because the plexiglass is up, or is that a restaurant too?
So the policy order that the board is considering, if it gets adopted without that particular language changing, would require employees and visitors to establishments to be wearing masks. That is inconsistent with the state's instructions where employees have to wear a mask or be behind a shield. But I would suggest that that inconsistency is actually just further reflection of the cautious approach. The board is saying we in Brattleboro want to take a more cautious approach. We want this community to embrace people wearing masks to protect the broader public. And so there will be circumstances where that may be impractical. We've discussed a few of those tonight. But the general rule should be that employees, in addition to visitors, are wearing masks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. There's no other comments. I just want to ask Peter what's the non-messy way to address a couple of, well, in my self-interest, I want to know how we're going to address the child question.
So I made a note there I was going to come back to and just ask if there's a consensus of the board, but we could change 2 to 5 and it's done.
Fine with me.
There's more conversation around that.
Can you just I don't have it in front of me. Just remind me how it's worded in the sentence.
Sure. So it would say CDC advises that cloth face coverings should not be placed on young children under age 5. And then also a few other circumstances.
It's not the CDC though now. It's because the CDC.
Well, that's a good point. Yep. Yep.
So that's what I just want to make sure we had the.
Yep. That's a really good point. So how about just
not,
face coverings should not be placed. Pardon?
Say that again.
It's our own common sense law.
Yeah. It's the BCS.
Brattleboro health officers.
Oh no.
Brattleboro common sense. Wait, can you explain why the CDC's position has changed, or what's the situation?
No, it's because we've changed the number.
Oh, because you went from.
I think it's unreasonable to have kids under 5, regardless of kids under 2.
So
okay.
I've done to the document to keep it simple is just deleting the CDC advises that. So the sentence would read: cloth face coverings should not be placed on young children under age 5.
Or not required. Do you want to just say not required?
Or not required. Well, actually, I think we need to be really careful because they are saying don't put them on people who can't take them off themselves. Not
Right.
just
They
not
could take
required.
them off.
Yeah, and the rub is that we're speaking to practicality. They're speaking to safety and proximity levels and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy with that. If everybody,
Welcome to being good Vermonters.
Sort of a consensus on that change to the document. Thumbs up from Elizabeth. Thank you. So, Daniel, might come back to you.
Yeah, with a motion.
I think we really need. I know some folks might be out there wanting to type. They haven't yet, but they want to say something. But I really feel like we got to finish the rest of the town business, even though it's important. So, but I do want to put that on the next week's agenda to get some feedback and kind of pick up some loose ends. So Daniel, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah. Let's see. I'm doing this on the fly, so I move to. Let me look at the document. That's always helpful. I move to adopt the COVID-19 emergency order wearing face coverings required in. What are we saying instead of retail stores?
Nope.
Wearing face coverings.
Wearing face coverings required.
Okay.
Awkward syntax, but that's what it says now.
Okay.
All right. Bless you.
Did that motion get in? Did that make sense, or do we need to say it again?
No, that makes sense. I'll just thank you, Daniel. You have made a motion requiring face coverings on the interior of establishments in Brattleboro. As was read earlier, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 And that's 5-0. Thank you. That was a little messy, but I think we did a good thing there. And we are going to hear about it one way or the other. So that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's our job, right? That's our job.
Yes.
So I'd like to move on. We have an important thing to do as liquor commissioners. Do I have a motion to magically become liquor commissioners? Liz?
So moved.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right. We have a third-class liquor license before us, and kick that over to Peter to give us a couple details.
Yes, so there is at Vermont Table at 22 High Street. They already have a first-class liquor license allowing the sale of beer and wine. They're seeking a third-class liquor license allowing them to also serve liquor or hard alcohol. And this would be in conjunction with the restaurant operation at that location. They want to be ready as they're able to, when they become allowed to gear back up the operation of the business, to be able to have a full service bar. And so their application is in order. The staff has conducted the normal review. The police and fire departments both recommend approval. And so I do believe that Mr. Bratton is in the go-to meeting here this evening. You might want to hear directly from him, but we recommend approval.
Here he is.
Thank you, Peter. And Corey, sorry about that. I should have brought you on before Peter explained for us, but
well, it's
do you
been
want to introduce
fascinating.
yourself to the board?
Yeah, hi, my name's Corey. I'm a local person here. Have a restaurant downtown. We just opened in February, so it was an interesting few weeks. We're looking forward to getting back to it, and knowing the liquor licensing process can take some time. I'm taking this time now to kind of get ahead of it. Hopefully, it's sooner rather than later.
Great, thank you. I personally have, well, you weren't open that long, so that's my excuse. But I was hoping to get to the restaurant and never did. But
well,
I do.
I could say in front of this great platform here, we are doing takeout now, Tuesday through Saturday, noon to 7. We have kind of a smaller, streamlined menu. We have some really good burrito and kind of a Tex-Mex thing we're doing right now, and it's just me and my business partner Sam doing it all. So you can have something personally prepared by myself if you so choose.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a long-standing tradition of giving someone who is about to get, or hopefully about to get a liquor license, a little plug there. So I'm happy to do that. And also, I just want to give a shout out to you and Sam, because you were one of the first businesses to organize a really nice set of meals for Groundworks right out of the gate.
Yeah, that was, and we were lucky to have the support of Black River Produce to make that possible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You and Black River Produce and Sam. So, all right. Anybody have any questions for Corey?
No.
No. Okay. How about a motion? Silence. Liz.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Let me just find that language.
That's what I can find.
There we go.
But it's our tradition, Corey, for the chair not to make motions. But now I'm going to take time. So
all right. Here we go.
Okay.
I move to approve a third-class liquor license for Corey Bratton Catering LLC, doing business as a Vermont Table, located at 22 High Street, Suite 105.
Thanks, Liz. You've made a motion to approve a third-class liquor license for Corey Bratton Catering LLC, doing business as a Vermont Table at 22 High Street. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? None. So that's unanimous. Congratulations, and we wish you luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Bye.
So let's see. We are now at the water and sewer, which we are going to move, I think. Oh, so we should close. Let's adjourn as liquor commissioners. Otherwise, we'll just be liquor commissioners till the end of time. So somebody want to make a motion? Come on, everyone, jump in.
I make a motion.
Go for it, Ian.
Yeah, I'll move to adjourn, being the liquor. What's the term?
Liquor commissioner.
Liquor commissioners.
Remember that if you ever get to go to a bar again in this town. So, just a joke. So all those in favor?
Aye.
That's 5-0.
Yeah, that would be cool, Ian, because when they proof you, you could say, not only am I over 21, I'm a liquor commissioner in this town.
Right.
Come on.
And I'll
Ian
give
is
you my
well
vote because I'm lame duck anyways.
Okay, so that means that we are moving to item 11. Guess what? New business. We have some happy news for Peter to report.
We do. John O'Connor retired as our town finance director and town treasurer back in February of this year. We've been well served during the interim period, but through a contractual relationship with an accounting firm from Nashua, New Hampshire, it was what we needed at the time to see us through as a bridge to the new finance director, but we've been eager for this moment to arrive. We had a successful second search. We had actually a really good, strong applicant pool. And the person who emerged from that as the best qualified and person that's going to join our team is Andre Yeager. He's been most recently the budget director for Keene State College. And prior to that, he had a career of about 20 years in the private sector, starting out as an accountant with a major accounting firm doing audit and tax work. And then 16 years of audit and financial management experience with private companies in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And 6 of those 16 years were with C&S, Wholesale Grocers, at their headquarters in Keene. So he's been a resident of this region for a while, living over in the Keene area, and is ready to become our finance director at 8:30 tomorrow morning. This is an unusual circumstance. The board is well aware of this, but I'll say for the public to understand what's happening tonight. Under our form of government, the town manager is responsible for the appointment of staff members and the supervision of the staff. There are 2 positions on the town staff where there's kind of a hybrid situation because they also have statutory responsibilities that make them accountable to the select board and have some independent authority under state statute. One being the town clerk and the other being the town treasurer. Town clerk obviously wears that same label both as the appointed director of that function of town government and as the statutory town clerk responsible for elections and keeper of records and so on. But as town clerk is appointed annually by the select board, and that gets ratified at representative town meeting. Likewise with the town treasurer. So I have appointed Mr. Yeager to be the finance director effective tomorrow, but only you have the authority to appoint him to be the town treasurer in that dual role. And so I'm asking this evening that you do that, subject to ratification by representative town meeting when we are able to hold one.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I had the pleasure of being involved in the selection process, and it was both fascinating and informative, and we had a lot of great candidates, which is always a good thing.
Yep.
So it was a it was a tough battle. And I'm excited to have Andre come on board. Does he go by Andre, by the way? Or is it?
Yes. Yeah, he's Andre. Yep.
Okay. Because in a couple docs it was Andrew, I thought. But maybe that was my own mistake. Okay. So I think this is a fairly straightforward process. We just need a motion. Does the board members have their materials?
Yes. Yeah, I got it. I just, I'll do it. I move to appoint Andre Yeager as the town treasurer, subject to ratification at representative town meeting.
Thank you, Daniel, and forgive the ribbing to everybody. Daniel has made a motion to appoint Andre Yeager as the town treasurer, subject to ratification at representative town meeting when that can occur. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And none opposed. That's 5-0. Congrats to Andre. So we now have parking fund budget. So how are you feeling about this, Peter?
Well, so I wanted to ask the board actually, we thought ahead about the utility 3 items because we know that's going to take a fair amount of time. Those are large questions for you to tackle, and we've got a lot of information to present. You'll have a lot of discussion to have. The parking fund is a little more straightforward, but it's 9:40, and there are 2 other pieces of business to do. So since we are going to have a special meeting a week from tonight, and right now the only things we have are the 3 utility items and the check-in with the community about the masks. If you'd like to also defer this to next week, we'll be happy to wait.
I would like that.
I defer.
I defer.
Me too.
Okay. I was on the fence, so I'm glad you all.
Is there any prejudice to doing it next week? Is there any issue to do it next week?
No, it's Patrick and I'll be presenting it to you, so we're all set. We're happy to do that, and there's no timing issue because of parking being closed at this time, and you just need to adopt a parking budget prior to July 1st.
Okay. Yeah, I'm also in favor.
Thank you. Sounds good, Peter. Our next item is a grant, COVID-19 JAG grant reimbursement.
So we've talked in the past as part of the COVID-related financial reports about the fact that this is an unusual sort of emergency in that we're not incurring a lot of extra costs, but there are some, and there's a few different ways in which we might be able to receive some funding from outside that are not part of that much more cumbersome FEMA process that is sort of disaster relief aid that comes, whether it's a natural disaster or something like this. And this is one of those. So this is, we're asking you for approval to apply for a JAG COVID-19 grant. You're familiar with the regular JAG program that happens annually, where there's some funding that comes from the Department of Justice, the United States Department of Justice, down through the states to police departments across the country. Our police department gets its fair share of those funds each year. This is a similar program, but specific to COVID-19, and there are some specific purposes for which the money can be spent. We need that. We need some additional protective equipment. We need to also address there's first aid kits, some additional equipment, and to keep a on-hand supply of personal protective equipment. So $39,730 is the amount that we've been told is sort of allocated to the Brattleboro Police Department. And we just need to apply for it. So we're asking you tonight for permission to do that.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions from folks? So it's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
How about a motion?
Go ahead, Liz.
Okay. I move to approve the grant application in the amount of $39,730 for a BGA FY20 Coronavirus ESF Program grant from the Office of Justice Programs.
Thank you, Liz. Liz has made a motion to approve the grant application in the amount of $39,730 originating from the Office of Justice Programs. All those in favor, say aye.
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 And none opposed, so that's 5-0. Thank you. Let's see. We now have one of these things that always dismays me, the scattered site grants, which Liz is going to tell us all about. No. Peter's going to tell us a little bit about the 5 counties.
Actually, I'm going to ask Patrick if you can bring yourself on.
Oh,
please,
yeah.
To
a new face.
Let us know about this. Thank you.
So, good evening, everybody, and thank you. I'll be quick. I know the hour is getting late. So this is a simple and procedural bit of business that accompanies each of the VCDP grants. We're asking the board to adopt the grant agreement resolution and to accept and appropriate the sum of $375,000 from the Vermont Community Development Program for the 5-county home ownership services project, which is a project of Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust. And just to sort of briefly remind folks, it was later last year that we came before the board and we received authorization to submit a grant application. The state has reviewed that grant application, provided us with preliminary notification of a grant award. We've worked with Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust to achieve the sort of award conditions. And now there is an offer of grant agreement and the board is asked to accept and appropriate it. There's one other point that I think may be important to remind the public about, especially, is that this is a 5-county project, which means this is a consortium effort between the town of Brattleboro and the city of Montpelier. And our subrecipient is Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, but they are working with a sister organization called Down Street Housing and Community Development, I believe, and they work in 3 counties in central Vermont. So this one sort of consortium application is going to provide a range of home ownership services to income eligible households across 5 counties. And I would take any questions.
Do we have any question for Patrick? Liz does. Go ahead.
Is the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust the lead in this consortium?
They are the lead subrecipient, yes. In fact, they'll be doing, I forget what the terminology is, but they will be underwriting, I believe, the loans for the home ownership and home repair loans that occur for all 5 counties. So it's something they're quite good at. The state has a good deal of confidence in them. And so they're the lead agency and we're the lead municipality.
Yeah, and I see
That's great. So I remember when Bruce Whitney came to the board to discuss it.
Yep.
Yes, and we did quiz Bruce a little bit on percentage of loans going to Brattleboro, and it's a decent amount considering.
Yeah, historically, Brattleboro households have done very well with this program and have been a recipient of counseling services and home repair loans far in excess of our percentage across the counties. So it's certainly a program which is highly utilized.
Okay. My only other question is I do see in the recommendation doc, it says public hearing, to conduct a public hearing. Is that something that I shouldn't worry about as chair?
No, so there were 2 memos that came with the board packet this time. One which was a simple cover memo, and one was the last memo. that occurred. It was sort of a reference document for when the grant application went through. There are 2 times in the life of a VCDP grant where a public hearing needs to take place. One is at the application phase and one is at closeout. The action the board is asked to take this evening is just to accept and appropriate. And so no public hearing is required.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I didn't look carefully at the date on that document. All right. If there's no further questions or comments, I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion, but I see there's 2 motions. Should I make them both? Yeah?
Yeah.
I see
Why
Peter
not?
nodding. Okay. So I will move to adopt the grant agreement resolution and to accept and appropriate the sum of $375,000 from the Vermont Community Development Program for the 5-county home ownership service program of the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust as presented. And I move to authorize Town Manager Peter Elwell to execute the grant agreement and all other documents necessary to implement the grant.
Thanks,
Is
Brandy.
that done properly? Okay.
Sounds great to me. You made 2 motions, one to adopt the grant agreement resolution and accept and appropriate the sum of $375,000 from VCDP for the 5-county home ownership service program of Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, and to authorize Town Manager Elwell to execute the grant agreement and all other documents necessary to implement said grant. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And none opposed. And I believe we're going to sneak it in under 10. It looks like we've come to the end of our business. I just want to say to fellow board members to go out and disseminate some very rapid information, however you think is appropriate. As Brattleboro's health commissioners, that's what we'll be doing in the next couple of days, I think, to try to get the word out. And if you can, speak to a couple of shop owners on the street to see if you can get some concerns and stuff like that. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just in furtherance of that, I hadn't actually planned to do this, but you've made a good point. I know each of you has your own networks with which you can touch a lot of folks out in town with this information. So as soon as we're off the meeting, I will make the 2 small changes that you made before adopting the resolution, and then I'll email it out to all of you. So before you hit your Facebook pages tonight, give me about 15 minutes and you'll have the actual adopted document.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thanks for that heads up.
extra hours there, Peter. And you kind of saved our butts with adopt to work with, because otherwise we would have been kind of swimming around for quite a while, I'm sure. So.
No kinda about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You don't know what I had up my sleeve.
Sorry?
It was nothing. It was nothing. It's
and thanks once again to Patrick for making my job possible, actually, with some of the workings that he does that I don't have to worry about with all of this technology. So, anyone want to make a motion?
I move that we adjourn.
Brandy's moved to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.